Howdy folks, welcome to version 1 of the CompTIA A Plus practice questions for the 220-1202 exam, which is also known as Core 2. Some of you guys might know this is the Core 2 exam. Now folks, these practice questions will test you against the same objectives as the official A Plus exam and also measure you on the same skills as the official A Plus exam. Now for those of you wondering if these are the actual questions from the exam, no they are not. Anyway folks, without wasting too much of your time, if you haven't done it already, please remember to give this video a like to help support the work I do. I really do appreciate the likes for those of you who give them. Also, if you'd like to know when I release more A Plus practice question videos, or just videos in general, maybe consider subscribing. It's up to you. Alrighty folks, let's jump into this first question. Question number 1. You are preparing to remediate a Trojan horse that was found on a workstation. Which of the following steps should you complete before removing the Trojan horse? You'll notice that I've highlighted a certain word there in capital letters and in a different color. That, folks, is to draw attention to the fact that there might possibly be more than one answer that's correct here. And I want to see if you know which one is more correct than the other ones. Now this same concept, guys, is going to happen in the official exam. Certain words like the word before, or the word best, or the word least, words like that will be highlighted in bold in the exam and often even in a different color. That in the official exam is to draw attention to the fact that there might be more than one answer. There probably will be more than one answer that is actually correct there, and CompTIA wants to see or test and see if you know which one is better suited for that specific scenario. So normally out of the 4 answers, because they normally give you 4 answers, out of the 4 answers, 2 of them normally has nothing to do with the question and 2 of them are actually correct. We want to see if you know, or in that case CompTIA is going to want to see if you know which one is better suited for that specific scenario. So if it sometimes seems like there's more than one correct answer, it's probably because there is more than one correct answer, guys. Anyway, so if we look at this question in front of us, which of the following steps should you complete before removing a Trojan horse? Is it answer A here? Schedule a malware scan. Now, yes, a malware scan is something you should go and do if you've got a Trojan horse, but I would not say that is the first step that needs to take place here. We'll get back to this one in just a moment. Is it answer B? Educate the user. Also very, very important when it comes to Trojan horses, but I would not say that is the first step that needs to take place here, or the thing that you need to go and do before a Trojan horse. It is probably one of the most important steps here, but it's not what you need to go and do before removing a Trojan horse. So the answer, folks, it's not answer A, it's not answer B. Is it answer C? Disable system restore. So far, yes, that's the answer, because system restore is a form of a backup. I wouldn't say it is a backup, but it's kind of like a backup. So one of the first things we do, folks, besides quarantining a machine when we realize it's got some sort of infection, as soon as you realize there's an infection, you quarantine that machine. Besides doing that, we disable any and all forms of backup on that computer or on that server. This is to prevent the backups from getting compromised. At the moment, you might still have some backups that can be used. But if you don't turn the backup being off, or in this case system restore, you risk your system restore or your backups getting compromised. So there's a very good chance it might make another automatic system restore point now, and that means it's actually going to go and back up the Trojan horse, which is the last thing we want. The same concept applies to backups. So if there was an answer here that said disable backups, that would actually be just as correct, if not more. So the first thing you do, besides quarantining a machine, is disable any and all forms of backup to avoid them getting compromised. And once you've cleaned the system, then you go and turn the backups back on again, obviously. Answer D there, run Windows Update. Also very important, but that's not the answer here, folks. The answer in this specific scenario is answer C here. Updating your system, very important, because it's going to make sure you patch those security vulnerabilities which could potentially avoid this from happening again in the foreseeable future. Educating the user, You know, at the end of the day, it doesn't help you've got security that looks like it's from freaking NASA, but you don't educate the users on how to go and use this. At the end of the day, if they're going to go click on that link or open that attachment, yeah, that security is going to mean nothing. And then, of course, a malware scan. Also very important. So once you've disabled your system restore and your backups and quarantine the machine, yes, you're going to go and run a malware scan as one of your mitigations or solutions to get this Trojan horse possibly off this machine. But at the end of the day, the answer remains C here, folks. Disable system restore. Let's move you guys on to question number 2 here. You are setting up a newly built computer. Which of the following is the fastest way to install Windows 10? Alright, looking at answer A. Can you go and install Windows 10 like that? Yes, it is possible, folks, but to do an in-place upgrade, it requires you to have an existing operating system on that machine. Now, considering that they're trying to install Windows 10 here, it's safe to assume that the operating system that needs to be on there is probably going to be something older. Something like Windows 8.1, Windows 8, or Windows 7. So you need this machine in question to already have an existing old operating system on there for you to be able to upgrade onto Windows 10. If you look at the question, it said you are selling a newly built computer. If it's a newly built computer, why would you have an old operating system on there? You would not. It would be a blank computer. If it's a blank computer, it's physically impossible to go and upgrade since there is no operating system to go and upgrade from. So A is physically impossible in this specific scenario, folks. Looking at answer B, a factory reset. Now, folks, a factory reset means you already use this machine also. Very similar to answer A. So answer A, kind of insinuated that you had some sort of existing operating system there already. Factory reset is kind of the same deal. You would need to already have an existing operating system on here. And for you to want to go and reset this machine probably has been used. Somebody has used this for a couple of weeks, couple of months, or a couple of years. They changed some settings, they installed or uninstalled some stuff. They've got a bunch of data on this machine. So reset is kind of like formatting. It's to kind of put the machine back to the way it was when you first just installed Windows. It's going to put the programs back the way it was. So any programs you've recently installed will be uninstalled. Any settings you've changed will be changed back. It's kind of like formatting the machine. But in a nutshell here, guys, it means you've used this machine already for an X amount of time. I'm going to rule out answer B as well because, once again, the question said you are selling a newly built computer. Now, if it's a newly built computer, you would not be able to do reset because there's going to be nothing to go and reset. It would be blank, would it not? So answer A and answer B is incorrect. You need to go, in other words, install Windows 10 for the very first time. It will be the first operating system on this machine is what we're saying. Looking at answer C, that's a system restore. System restore means you already have an operating system on there. This operating system has obviously run for some time now, a couple of weeks, couple of months. And over that period of time, it's made restore points. And system restore is kind of like a time machine of sorts. It allows you to send this machine back in time to an earlier state. Now, considering we are literally installing Windows for the first time, there will not be an earlier state to go and restore it to. And system restore you will not have access to until you go and install Windows 10 first, to begin with. So answer A, B, and C is physically impossible. So by using the process of elimination, folks, the only answer that's left here is answer D. Unattended installation. And yes, that is in fact the answer in case you're wondering. The word unattended means you are doing some sort of automated installation here. It is somewhat automated. You get what we call high touch installation, low touch, which is sometimes known as light touch, and you get what we call zero touch installation. High touch means you're doing everything yourself, manually. That's old school. It requires a high level of interaction from the user, being you most likely. Low touch, also known as light touch, means there's some level of automation involved here, which is most likely what they mean here. Zero touch means it's 100% automated, this installation. It could be something you've scheduled like a month ago, and you might even have forgotten about it. So I'm going to assume this is a low touch installation, but it could be zero touch. It's some level of automation involved here, which means you're going to start the process. You might go and click on install. You might come back after lunch and you might say, oh, okay, cool, it's done, it's installed. So it is for the most part automated. But an unattended installation is something you can do on a blank machine that has no operating system on it yet. So D is very much possible, guys. It generally involves something called an image, which is not what this question is about. But in case you don't know, it normally uses what we call an image. Moving you folks on to question number 3 here. You receive a call from a user who clicked on a web advertisement. Now, every time the user moves the mouse, a pop-up displays across their monitor. Which of the following procedures should you perform? Now, you will notice that in brackets there, I added that you should go and choose 2. I did that on purpose to get you guys used to the exam, the real exam, because in the real exam, from time to time, you'll be required to go and choose 2 or 3 or 4 answers. Sometimes CompTIA will just tell you choose all that apply. So yes, most of the time, you'll be presented with 4 possible answers, of which you can only choose 1. So about 80% of the exam will probably be like that. 70, 80%, somewhere around there. But then at least 1 out of every 10 questions, you will be presented with 4 to 8 possible choices, anywhere between 4 and 8, sometimes up to 10. And the question will say you need to go and choose 2 or 3, or just in general, choose all that apply. In that situation, guys, make sure you pay attention to how many you need to go and choose. Otherwise, you're going to lose some marks unnecessarily. Let's not try and lose some marks in this exam. Anyway, getting back to the actual question here. So the person clicked on a web advertisement. Now every time they move their mouse, they see some sort of pop-up on their monitor. You know, very annoying. This happens especially of browsers. So what is that, folks? Folks, that is adware. It can be lots of things, but usually that is adware. I see this especially a lot of my kids. And I'll be honest with you guys, it really annoys me. So ever so often I'll go and wipe their PCs, make them blank, install a brand new fresh copy of Windows, and before you know it, they'll go to some sketchy website, click on some silly ad, and before you know it, now they keep seeing all kinds of weird pop-ups on their screen. Now it's possible for these pop-ups to pop up even though the browser might be closed, but it is more common to see these pop-ups popping up when you open the browser. So as you browse the internet to whatever website you go to, even if you go to legitimate websites, these pop-ups will continue to just pop up randomly with all kinds of ads. Very, very, very annoying. That is adware. It's a special kind of malware. I wouldn't say it harms your PC per se. It's more annoying than anything else. Now, how do we get that off? Is it answer A, reinstall the browser? No. I've tried that myself. I can tell you now, it doesn't work. The answer is absolutely not. You're going to reinstall the browser. It's not going to solve the problem. It's not in your browser. It's on your PC. Would restarting the machine solve this? No, guys. It's like a software you've installed in your machine. Restarting a machine is not going to suddenly make the software disappear. As soon as you restart the machine, the software is still there. You need to go and uninstall the software or remove it in some sort of way for it to go away. Now, folks, I've already just eliminated answer A and answer B. So, remember the question said we need to go and choose 2. And considering I've eliminated 2 by a process of elimination, we already know the answer is C and D. But let's have a look at them nonetheless. Answer C says perform a malware scan. Yes. Malware, folks, in case you don't know, is not something specific. It's an umbrella term we use. So under this umbrella, which we call malware, you'll find things like viruses, Trojan horses, worms, spyware, and adware. Also other things like ransomware and rootkits and. The list goes on. The point here is adware falls under the umbrella of malware. So by doing a malware scan of something like an antivirus, yes, this could potentially take care of your problem. So the answer is definitely C. That's at least one of the 2 answers. Looking at answer D, boot in safe mode. Now I would not say this is a must, but it does generally aid with this. So C is definitely more correct than D, but the question does say we need to go and choose 2 answers, and the only other answer here that makes sense is to go and say D. Sometimes, folks, with some malwares, you're unable to start the machine. So sometimes, to get around that, we need to start our computers in what we call safe mode. It starts that computer up without most of its services and without most of its drivers. Yes, there are some services and some drivers that still start up with the PC, but they're absolutely minimal. So if we're going to start this machine without most of its drivers and services and stuff, very good chance it's going to start up safely now without crashing, and you can now safely go and remove this malware in the background. So your answer here, folks, is C and D. Moving on to question 4. You are troubleshooting boot times for a user. You attempt to use msconfig, which is basically short for Microsoft configuration, to see which programs are starting with the operating system, but you receive a message that it can no longer be used to view the startup items. Which of the following programs can you use to view the startup items? Alright folks, so how this works is, up until Windows 7, for those of you that used to use Windows 7, if you go and type in msconfig into your computer, it'll open a small little console, various tabs, one of which that says Startup. And on that tab, you will see what starts up with your computer or your client's computer. So anything you've installed, like Adobe Reader, antiviruses, whatever, they will be displayed there, and you can choose whether these items need to be starting up with your Windows or not. Now, if you go and look on that exact same place from Windows 8 onwards, so Windows 8, 8.1, and Windows 10, you will find that it's now blank. The tab is, funny enough, still there up until Windows 11 even. The tab is still there. It still says startup items. But if you go there, you will find it's blank. If you do this on a client operating system like Windows 8, 8.1, Windows 10, or Windows 11, you'll find there's a small little message there. It says, please note, this has moved to Task Manager. I might have just given you the answer there. Now, on the server operating systems, it's also no longer there. But on the server operating systems, if you go to that startup tab on any new server operating system, you'll find it literally just is blank. There's not even a sticky note there that says, hey, please note this is moved. I don't know why. I feel Microsoft is dropping the ball there. They could have at least left a little note on the server side as well. On the client side, however, you'll see they at least left you a note telling you where it's moved to. And they actually make it clickable. If you click on that, it actually opens Task Manager. Not only does it open Task Manager, it also opens it on the correct tab for you, which is the Startup tab in Task Manager. Now folks, if you go to Windows 8, 8.1, Windows 10, or Windows 11, and you go into Task Manager, you will find there are multiple tabs, one of which is called Startup. And if you go in there, that is where you will now find all the items that start up with your Windows. Now looking at the 4 answers there, folks, the answer is obviously answer B there. That is the shorter version to go and open Task Manager. So if you go and type that into run command or something like that, that will in fact launch Task Manager. So the answer is B. Answer A, which is MSInfo32, that will show you your computer's system information. So if you go type that into your computer, it will give you an overview of your computer's information, what operating system you're running, how much RAM you've got, do you have a graphics card, how big is it, you can see pretty much anything and everything about your machine. It doesn't do anything, it just displays a whole bunch of information. Answer C will launch something called Performance Monitor, which uses what we call counters. You can go and monitor various things on your machine, similar to Task Manager, but it does not have the startup items thing that you're looking for. Answer D is going to open your computer's registry, if you know what the registry is. That's got nothing to do with this question. Anyway, folks, let's move you on to question number 5 here. You have a department that has the following technical requirements. So the requirements are quad-core processor, 250 gigs hard drive space, and 6 gigs of RAM. The company plans to upgrade from a 32-bit Windows operating system to a 64-bit operating system. Which of the following will the company be able to fully take advantage of after the upgrade? Alright, folks, so there's something interesting here that you need to know. With a 64-bit operating system, you are able to take advantage of quite a few things, one of which being your RAM. A 32-bit operating system, guys, is limited to about 3.3 gigs of RAM. Depending on the manual you have or the course you're attending, your trainer or your manual will tell you it's 3 gigs. Some folks will tell you it's 4 gigs. Most manuals I've seen will tell you it's 4 gigs. But in reality, to be more precise, it's actually 3.3 gigs. Now, they won't ask you that in the exam, guys. In the exam, they will ask you something similar to this, and the answer will be 4 gigs of RAM. So if they ask you directly, how much RAM does a 32-bit operating system limit you to? It's 4 gig. Or if they moan and groan and say somebody moans they've got 8 gig or whatever RAM installed, possibly even more than 8 gigs, but they're only able to access 4 gigs of that RAM or use 4 gigs of that RAM. What could be a possible reason for that? Folks, the answer will always be because they're using a 32-bit operating system. Many moons ago, we didn't actually have that much RAM, so it wasn't a problem back in the day. But nowadays, everybody's got stupid amounts of RAM, way more than 4 gigs of RAM. Even normal office PCs usually have more than 4 gigs of RAM. So as you can imagine, running a 32-bit operating system is just not going to cut it. So if I've got 8 gigs of RAM installed, in reality, I can only use 3.3 gigs, or as CompTIA says, 4 gigs of RAM. That's a waste, don't you think? So hard drive wise, no, that does not really get affected by a 32-bit or a 64-bit operating system. RAM, yes, that's the answer. CPU does somewhat get affected by a 64-bit operating system. You can get more lanes, so to speak, you get more speed out of it. But the biggest contributing factor here, guys, is going to be the RAM. If I look at the fact that they're running a quad-core processor, they're not really going to benefit out of the CPU, because quad-core processors didn't really support 64-bit back in the day. Only from around i3, i5, i7, and so on, that they slowly but surely start supporting 64-bit. Now don't get me wrong, quad-core does support 64-bit. I've seen quad-core processors from back in the day support this. Core to dual or dual core, as some people might know it. All of those did support 64-bit, but not all of them. So you found some CPUs then, back then it will support 64-bit, but not all of them. But folks, one sure thing here is the fact that the RAM is 6 gigs, and I will absolutely be able to take advantage of that 6 gigs if I run 64-bit. If I run a 32-bit, I'll only be able to use about 3.3, or as CompTIA says, 4 gigs of that 6 gig. So the answer is and remains B here. Touchscreen wise, guys, that's got absolutely nothing to do with this question. Alright folks, let's move you on. Question number 6. You have a user that would like to shut down their PC gracefully and prevent file corruption in the event of a power failure. Which of the following should the user use? Alright, so we've got a bit of a predicament here. This person, this user, they want to shut down their PC in a way that's not going to cause any harm, not cause them to lose any data. And this is especially common in the event of a power failure. So should you have some sort of power failure, like the question mentions here, what can we do that will basically give us some form of backup power, if you will, just enough to be able to shut down the PC gracefully. Not necessarily to keep the PC up and running, just so that I can save any open documents and shut down the PC gracefully without causing any potential damage. Now, looking at the 4 names we've got in front of us, guys, does anything come to mind? If you look at answer A, a surge protector, that has got nothing to do with backup power. Now, all 4 of these answers do have to do with power, but not all of them have got to do with backup power. A surge protector, well, it does exactly what the name suggests. It protects you from a surge. Now, normally you'll go and plug this in directly into the wall, and whatever appliance you have, you'll go and plug that appliance into the surge protector. So it's kind of between your appliance and the wall socket. So should there be a surge, from the power company or from a lightning strike, the idea is the surge protector is supposed to take that knock. Normally they've got a massive fuse in them of some kind. It is supposed to take the knock and protect your appliance or appliances that's plugged into it. That's the purpose of a surge protector. If we look at a UPS, that is short for uninterruptible power supply. Now guys, I'm going to be honest with you, that actually is the answer here, but there's something you need to know about these UPSs. A UPS is not just a form of backup power. They actually, believe it or not, in most cases also serve as a surge protector. A lot of them actually have a fuse built into them, and you can actually use this UPS as if it is a surge protector. Now, I don't honestly really know if it's a very good surge protector, but I do know it is a surge protector nonetheless. It gives you clean energy as well, so it's able to clean up your energy. So if you stay in an area where your voltage is maybe unstable, maybe your voltage goes up, the voltage goes down, a UPS is very good at keeping your energy clean and safe. Green energy, if you will. So if you have something sensitive plugged into this UPS, something like a computer, it needs a stable power connection. Now, if your voltage is going to keep going up and down, you can actually end up, breaking your computer in some sort of way, blowing components and whatnot. We don't want that. So the UPS serves as a surge protector. It serves as a device that cleans up your energy, so when the voltage goes up, it brings it down. When the voltage goes down, it brings it up. And most important here, which is the answer, it gives you a form of backup power. It's got a battery in it, and it's able to sustain your PC for a very short amount of time, normally somewhere between 5 and 15 minutes in most cases, just enough for you to save any open documents that might not be saved yet, and so that you can go and turn this PC down safely. It is not meant to keep the PC running and running and running for long periods of time, absolutely not. Most UPSs are meant to keep your PC up and running for a very short amount of time, just so you can save your documents and turn it off safely. Although nowadays it's actually quite common to find special kinds of UPSs that's got what we call deep cycle batteries in them, and they're specifically meant to keep things up and running like your Wi-Fi and things like that, your router. So you'll plug in your access points, your routers, and all kinds of things like that in your household into this device, so that should you experience a power blackout in your area, your internet does not go out. Pretty cool, right? So the answer here we already know is a UPS. In case you guys don't know what a UPS looks like, there is a picture. So these ones are not too expensive. Depending on the country you're in, obviously the back sockets that behind this will look different. So generally there's only one button you need to go and press on most of them. And the back of this device, there's 2 power outlets at least in most cases. One is to plug it into the power, so you plug it into the wall socket. The other one is an additional plug-in behind this UPS device, which you can go and plug your PC into or your TV into or whatever device it is you want to go and provide backup power to. Now, in terms of answer C, a power strip, what is that? It's literally a small little device of sorts, if you can call it a device, that just splits your power. So if you have one little outlet in your wall socket and you've got, let's say, 3 or 4 or 5 appliances you want to plug into that socket, that's a problem if you only have one socket to go and plug into. So a power strip basically splits your sockets and gives you more. It's a way or a means for you to go and split the power into multiple sockets. There is a picture for you guys. Obviously, depending on the country you're in, these sockets might look different because not all countries use the same socket. Every country's got different sockets. Well, maybe not all of them, but a lot of countries use different sockets. The principle or the concept is the same though. Now, if you look at answer D, guys, we know the answer is not A, C, or D. Answer D is actually very much the same as answer C. If you were to go and just randomly Google what a power strip is, and you go and randomly Google what a power distribution unit is, at first you might actually think it's the same thing. In some cases, Google might even throw you out a picture of a power strip, which is actually not entirely correct. Remember, not everything you see is always correct. A power distribution unit, very much like a normal power strip, yes, it does split the power. Yes, it does give you extra plugs to go and plug into. But a power distribution unit, there's a picture for you guys. These devices are able to monitor your power in some cases. They can check the current, all kinds of things like that. So it's not just splitting the power like a normal power strip. It does that and more. So, and then some, in other words. Anyway, folks, the answer here is and remains answer B. Moving you guys on to question 7. Which of the following attacks uses information personalized in an attack in order to gain information? Alright, so if we look at answer A, phishing, and yes, you do spell it like that on purpose. You get many kinds of phishing, guys, in IT, but phishing generally comes down to sending somebody an email or an SMS or a WhatsApp or even possibly calling them and trying to trick this user normally into giving you something of value. Something like a username and a password. Something like a bank account number or a credit card number. That's normally what phishing comes down to. Now, phishing on its own is probably going to be via an email in most cases. I'm going to send you an email. I'm going to pretend to be someone or some entity that you know and feel comfortable with, possibly the bank maybe, and I'm going to ask you, hey, what's your bank account number and your password and username? Now, on its own, a lot of people won't fall victim to that. Even if they're not in IT, they might not fall victim to that because they'll see this email comes from some suspicious looking email. It might look like it's coming from Gmail. Now, why would your bank be mailing you from a Gmail address? That looks very funky and very suspicious. So it's very common to find phishing attacks being combined with other forms of attack like spoofing. So I'm going to accidentally explain spoofing to you guys now as well, which is answer D. Spoofing is to forge something. forge an email address, forge an IP address, forge a MAC address, forge a phone number, and so on and so forth. Now, phishing and spoofing are very often combined with one another. Yes, they can be used on their own, but it's very common to find these two being combined. So if I send you an email now asking you for private information and it comes from a Gmail address, yes, even people not in IT are gonna not fall victim to that. But if I send you an email now and it actually looks like it's coming from the bank, a lot of people, especially people that are not tech savvy, they might actually fall victim to this now, guys. That is spoofing combined with phishing. The email address of the bank has been spoofed. It looks like it's from the bank, but it's not the bank. So spoofing is to go and forge something. Phishing is to go and fish for information via something like an email. Now you get different kinds of phishing. It can also be vishing. So instead of a P in the front, it'll be a V. The V simply means you are phoning people and you're trying to trick them via the phone to go and do the exact same thing. There's a new thing that they just released now. It's called quishing with a Q. And that is when you try and trick people to go and scan a QR code. And then from there you try and trick them into giving you information. So that's something new which is actually not even included in this new version of the A+ course. Believe it or not. Quite funky, right? Now what is answer B? Spear phishing is also to go and try and trick users into giving information. But that's when you're targeting a specific person in a company. You are specifically targeting an IT administrator, or you're specifically targeting a specific manager. Now to do that, you need information about that person. So I'll probably go through your trash or something in the hopes of getting information that I can use in my attack. So maybe I'll go through your bin underneath your desk, if you happen to have a trash bin underneath your desk. And that's in the hope of finding any form of trash that I can go and use that's got information about you. Maybe it's got your full name and last name, it's got your residential address, your ID number or social security number, as some folks might say. Now, if I phone you or I mail you and I provide you with some of this information already, it already seems a lot more legit, because how else would I know this information? Meanwhile, I did something called dumpster diving. I went through your trash in the hopes of getting something of value that I can later use in another attack. Now, in case you guys haven't figured it out, that's actually the answer here. So when we say, which of the following attacks uses information personalized in an attack in order to get information, that's spear phishing. So how we get that information is up to us, but in most cases this will be by going through someone's trash and things like that. So the answer is B. In case you're wondering what C is denial of service. That's what DOS stands for. You also get DDoS, which is distributed denial of service attack. So denial of service is a form of attack, in case you don't know. It's where I or someone or something deny you access to an actual service. Now, a normal denial of service attack like that one is normally something small. This could be, for example, me blocking you from being able to print on your PC. I have now maybe turned off something called the print spooler on your machine. That's a service that runs in the background that allows you to go and print. Now, if I've turned that off or I block you from using that service, you will not be able to print, and I have now thus denied you the printing service. Anyway, moving on to question 8, folks. You have a user that is unable to visit the website lately, which they used to actually visit. You already checked and confirmed that the website is indeed online. Which one of the following steps will most likely solve the problem? Now, you will notice I put the words most likely in a different color there to draw attention to that this might be important. This is something you guys can expect in the real exam as well. Certain words sometimes will be in capital letters in the exam, and they may or may not be a different color. Normally they'll just put it in capital letters and they'll go and highlight it in bold, from what I've seen. So there is possibly more than one answer here, folks, that's possibly correct. So this person used to be able to visit this website. For some reason they can't do it anymore. You've checked, the website is online. What is most likely going to solve this problem? Is it answer A, deleting the browser history on the user's computer? No, guys, deleting the browser history is not going to make any difference. You just won't be able to see, or somebody else just won't be able to see on that specific PC which sites they've visited. But it's not going to solve the problem in terms of them not being able to access this website. Answer B, clearing the cache. That could potentially solve this problem, because the cache is a short-term memory your computer has. You get many kinds of short-term memory. One of them is your browser's cache. That's a cache or a short-term memory of websites you or the user have visited recently. Now, if you go and visit the same website you visited before, your browser will actually go and load it from the cache, or at least load most of it out of its short-term memory. The reason it does that is it loads the page quicker, but it also loads the page using less data. So that's beneficial in many ways. If you've got a lot of people loading a lot of websites in your company, if they're all using their browser cache, which they normally do, it loads with less data and it loads the websites quicker for people. So it's beneficial in many, many ways. The problem is sometimes this website might have changed in some sort of way, and now when it tries to load it from the cache, it just doesn't want to load at all, or there's some sort of issue. So answer B could very likely solve this problem. Looking at answer C, restarting the user's computer. Now that's a funny joke in IT. We always ask the people, have you tried turning it off and on again? Because it does surprisingly do a lot of things, but it's not going to clear your cache. So it's possible that it might solve the problem, depending on what the problem is, but it's more than likely not going to solve the problem. B is the most likely one to solve the problem. That's why we said most likely. So between B and C, B is a heck of a lot more likely to solve this problem. Looking at answer D, enabling ad blocking. Now, that's not going to solve the problem because it's not an ad issue. They literally said they cannot load the site at all. They're unable to load the website, which means they're not even going to see any ads. So it's not a matter of they're seeing ads and they want to try and avoid seeing ads. The user said they're unable to visit the website lately. If they're not even able to load the website, they're definitely not going to see any ads on this website. So D has got nothing to do with this, guys. It's definitely not A. It's definitely not D. It's between B and C, and B is a heck of a lot more likely going to solve this problem. So the answer here, folks, is B. To clear the temporary memory in your browser, because whatever your browser remembers is actually incorrect. This website is most likely changed in some sort of way. The developers maybe updated it, and now your PC is trying to load the old version of the website out of its temporary memory, which is now obviously incorrect. Moving you guys on to question 9. You need to change the processor in a desktop PC of one of your clients. Before you open the PC, which of the following procedures should you perform first? Choose all that apply. Now guys, you need to be careful in the exam. There's going to be times in the exam when it will tell you choose 2 or choose 3 or choose 4, or like in this case, choose all that apply. So I'm trying to simulate that as best as I can so you guys can get into the habit of this, that you need to read your questions properly in the exam. Otherwise, you're going to lose marks unnecessarily. The last thing we want is for you guys to lose marks unnecessarily. It could be that maybe you are choosing the correct answer in the exam, but what you did not realize is they want more than one answer from you. So yes, you might be right, but you're losing marks because there's more than one answer that needs to be chosen. Read the questions carefully, guys. Now, before changing the processor of a desktop PC, what should we do first? Is it answer A? Unplug the computer from its power source. Now, that sounds good, guys, because your number one concern is always going to be safety, especially of yourself and any human beings. Number one concern is always safety. Always plug out any device, make sure it's turned off, all of that. So anything to do with safety is probably going to be an answer. So far A looks like a plausible answer. Answer B, remove dust from the ventilation fans. That has got nothing to do with changing the processor. I mean, yes, that is something you can go and do while changing the processor, but it's not necessarily something you have to go and do, and it's definitely not the first thing you have to go and do. The question specifically says before you open the PC. Before you open the PC. Which of the following procedures should you perform first? Now, to go and remove the dust from the ventilation fans, guys, you in most cases have to already open the machine. They specifically say before you open the machine. Now, to go and clean the fans, before you open it, yeah, you can do that, but you're really going to struggle. That's nearly impossible. So generally, we need to open the machine. So we can completely rule out B. It's not something we normally do when we change the processor. And if you are going to do that, you're going to have to open the box first and all that. So it's got nothing to do with this question. So it's definitely not B. A is still very plausible. Answer C, putting on an ESD strap. That, guys, is short for electrostatic discharge strap. Something that is very important in the A+ course. It's very important in the A+ exam. But in real life, a lot of people don't actually use this. That's the funny thing about this. Yeah, people use it, but not as much as you might think. They really, really emphasize on this in the course, and they really test you on this in the exam. But in real life, we don't really use it. It's meh. So this is a strap you go put around your wrist or around your ankle, and you go clip this onto something that's grounded, like a metal table or something like that. So normally, if you just go and touch a motherboard or any piece of circuit board as is, there's a very good chance you can actually end up blowing that piece of circuitry. The human body has got enough static electricity in it to blow circuit boards like a motherboard. So to avoid that from happening, guys, we ground ourselves. Now, you can go and ground yourself manually if you want to, but according to A+, we need to go and use a rubber mat, which is not an answer here, or we need to go and use an electrostatic discharge strap, which is probably going to be around your wrist or around your ankle. So that is definitely something you need to do before you change the CPU. So far, A and C both look plausible. Answer D, putting the power supply unit in an anti-static bag. That's got nothing to do with this question, and quite frankly, we never put a power supply in an anti-static bag. Yes, there are various components in the computer that we do put in anti-static bags, but that's if it's a new component that we're taking out that we're about to install, or if we're about to go and store it. Now, why would we go and take the power supply out to begin with? It doesn't make any sense. We're trying to change the processor here. We're not changing the power supply unit. So there's no need to take a new one out of a bag. There's no need to go and put an old one in a bag. And whether it be a new one or an old one, power supplies just don't get put into anti-static bags because, well, they're robust. They don't have any circuit boards that's going to blow. So we just never put a power supply unit in an anti-static bag. Even if you go buy them new, you'll find it's in a normal little baggie. It's not an anti-static bag. So D's got nothing to do with this question. Answer E, ensuring proper ventilation. That's very much the same as answer B. It's got nothing to do with this question. When we change the processor, ventilation is the last of your concern, guys. The only thing you want to make sure of is once you've installed the CPU already, that the fan is maybe still clean, but it's definitely not the first thing you want to do. Remember, the question said, what do we do before you open the PC? Now, we're not going to worry about ventilation before opening the PC, and even if we were concerned about ventilation, we can only take care of that problem after we've opened the machine. So B is impossible, E is impossible, and it's definitely not a concern. So the answers here, guys, is and remain answer A and answer C. Moving you guys on to question 10 here. One of your clients just installed a new backup system. Which of the following types of backups should the client do first? Now, if you guys look at the 4 answers I've got in front of us, all 4 of these I can confirm are different types of backups you get. They really do exist. But which ones should you do first? Now, in any environment, guys, when you get to a client, whether it's be in your own environment, the first backup we always do is a full backup because we have no backup yet. Remember, if you're just doing your very first backup, there is currently no backups whatsoever. So the first backup you do is a full backup where we back up absolutely everything because we have no backup. The downside about a full backup is this can take a lot of time because it can be a tremendous amount of data that you're backing up. Once you've done your first full backup, then it's very unlikely you'll do another full backup after that. We only do full backups after that if we're about to go and do some sort of major system change where there's a very good chance that it might be a catastrophic failure. Let's say it's maybe 3 or 5 years later and I'm about to go and change the servers, upgrade the servers or something like that, then you might do a full backup again. But generally, in most cases, you only do one full backup, and that's going to be the very, very first backup you do. After you've done your first full backup, you will go and do what we call incremental and differential backups, daily, weekly, and monthly. And those backups literally just go and check what has changed since the last backup, and it'll only go back up the changes. That's pretty much what those 2 backups are. You can go and look them up if you guys want to. It's literally just going to go and check what has changed since the last backup. If anything changed, it'll back up the item that's got changed. If anything got deleted, it'll back up that change, and then the item will be deleted in the backups as well. If anything new got created or added, that new item will be backed up and added to the backup. So whatever the change is, it's going to go and back that up in your daily, weekly, and monthly backups. Now, another backup which is very important, but it's definitely not the first backup you're going to go and do, is an offsite backup. So yes, you should always do daily backups, weekly backups, and monthly backups. But a lot of companies forget sometimes how important it is to have an offsite backup. It's not the first backup you're going to do. It's probably the last backup you're going to do, but it's probably one of your most important backups you're going to do. There's a lot of threats out there, guys, like ransomware attacks. They get into your backups. Very often they get into your daily, your weekly, and monthly backups. And these backups, they normally get into them because they're plugged in. So should that ever happen to you, you're going to wish you had an offsite backup which was not plugged in. So the whole idea of an offsite backup is it's a backup that's not necessarily plugged in. Sometimes they're legitimately stored in an undisclosed location offsite. Other times we just call them offsite, but they're actually stored on site. They're just not plugged in. And in that case, you're going to go and use that backup. It did not get compromised because it was not actually plugged in. Question 11. Out of the following, which would you say is the most important concern an IT person would have in a data center? And that sounds quite interesting, doesn't it? Now, looking at the 4 answers I've got for you guys here, what would you say is the most important concern an IT person would have in a data center if you look at these 4 answers? Is it answer A, toner disposal? Now, what is toner? That is ink. Specifically for laser printers, guys. It's a powder-based ink specifically used by laser printers. Now, are we using laser printers in a data center? No, we're not using any printers for that matter in a data center. And disposing of the ink, that's going to be the last of my concerns. So it's definitely not answer A. Answer B, electrostatic discharge mats. Plausible, and we are working in a data center, but it's not like we're touching the motherboards and stuff normally. Normally we're just touching buttons and screens and keyboards and mouses and stuff. It's very rare that we'll actually be touching the actual circuit boards unless we're installing and uninstalling stuff. So B's plausible. I'll leave it up to plausible for now. Answer C, humidity levels. Yes, that's a lot more plausible than answer B here, folks. I'll get to that in just a second. Answer D, network cable length. No, in data centers and server rooms, cable length is not too big of a concern because most stuff is relatively close to one another. And you'll find these days it's actually a lot more common for people to go and use what we call fiber cables in a data center instead of normal old LAN cables. Yes, your normal LAN cables, if you look at Cat5, Cat5e, Cat6, Cat6a, and so on and so forth, yes, they've got a limit. And that limit is 100 meters if we're using the metric system. If we're not using the metric system, it'll be about approximately, I think, 328 feet. So that is obviously a problem, not a very big problem, because stuff is still relatively close to one another in a data center. But nowadays, like I said, it's way more common for people to use fiber cables, so it's not the biggest concern here. So the answer here, in my opinion, is between B and C. C being the more likely one, and that is in fact the answer. Why though? So folks, for this to make sense, let me back up a step or two here. In server rooms and in data centers, we normally strive for a humidity level of about approximately 50%. Now, realistically, we're probably not going to get 50% exactly. We're just trying to get as close as possible to 50% humidity. So if it's 48% or 52%, it's not the end of the world, as long as it's as close as possible to 50%. Why though? Because if the humidity is too high, condensation will take place. And as you can imagine, water droplets forming on circuit boards and stuff in a data center is definitely the last thing you want. That's going to cause a short circuit to take place and things are going to break. Definitely do not want that. If humidity is too low though, then the air is going to be very dry and static will take place. And as we know, static is also going to be a sort of a surge or a charge taking place, and we're going to end up blowing stuff. So we don't want humidity too high, we don't want it too low. Either way, stuff is going to break, and yeah, we don't want that. So if it's around 50%, then it's not too shabby. So that's generally what we want, and that's why we want it. The answer here is C, folks. Moving on to question 12. One of your users reports that their PC is running slowly. Oh, well, that's very common. You suspect it's a badly fragmented hard drive. Which of the following tools should you use? Now, for those of you that don't know what a fragmented hard drive is, or if I say badly fragmented, it means the hard drive is very unorganized. Imagine having a desk in front of you, a normal office desk, and maybe on a Monday morning it's very organized, nice, clean, and neat. So if you need to look for a certain document or a file or anything, you're probably going to find it in no time at all. but maybe around Thursday during the week, your desk has gotten pretty messy. I'm not saying stuff is missing, but if someone comes to you and they want a certain file or a certain document, yeah, it's going to take you a while to find it because your desk is very messy. That is fragmented. Hard drives, or at least the old mechanical hard drives, guys, they do the same thing. In the beginning, when you've just installed Windows, whatever Windows that might be, it's nice and neat and organized. As time goes by, you install stuff, uninstall stuff, add files, delete files, move files. So stuff gets very unorganized on that hard drive. Hard to believe, but it does happen. So from time to time, well, at least in the old days, we had to go and manually do something called defrag, which is literally just for you to go and organize your disk, if we have to put this in human terms. Now, the good news here is, which is slightly unrelated to this question, is this happens automatically now, ever since Windows 10 was released, guys. From Windows 10 onwards, so that obviously includes Windows 11, this happens automatically, at least once a week or once every 2 weeks. I'll have to go and double check if it's once a week or once every 2 weeks, but it happens automatically. Before Windows 10, this absolutely did not happen automatically. We had to go and manually go and do this. And we would only do this when the machine got really, really slow or, for some other reason. And because we never did it, it took forever and a day. You would normally go and start this process when you're about to go to bed, if it's your own PC. If it's in the office, you would probably start this when you're about to leave the office, and then hopefully when you get back the next day to the office, it would be done. Same with that PC of yours at home. You probably start this when you go to bed. Hopefully when you wake up the next morning, it will be done. It would take forever and a day. But if it does this so regularly, now in Windows 10 and in Windows 11, it does it once a week or once every 2 weeks. Because it happens so regularly, it literally just takes like a minute, if not less. So it happens automatically. There's no need for us to go into this anymore. But even though this happens automatically, the question here wants to see if you know what tool we go and use for that. Well, not just the tool, but what command you can run to launch this tool, whatever this tool might be. Now we want to go and use the check disk tool. We call it defragmentation or check disk tool. And there's various commands you can go and use for that. Answer A, folks, doesn't really give you a tool per se. It's a window that's going to pop up on your machine that will show you information about your machine or the user's machine. It'll show you exactly what make and model it is, how much RAM it's got, anything and everything about the machine. It's not really a tool. It's just a lot of useful information is what A will do. It's got nothing to do with hard drives being fragmented. Answer B, that will open the resource monitor tool. So if you go to your search bar on your machine, or if you go to your administrative tools and you run a search for resource monitor, that's what will open if you go run that tool. You can actually see it by looking at the name. It says ResMon. That's resource monitor, folks. Answer C is the defragmentation graphical interface or graphical user interface. That actually is the answer here, by the way. And answer D is just good old-fashioned msconfig, which we used to use a lot up until Windows 7. And nowadays, we don't really use it anymore because that stuff has now been moved to other places like Task Manager. You can still go and open it. So on Windows 10 and Windows 11, you can absolutely still go and type in msconfig.exe. It's got a bunch of tabs of relatively useful stuff. I wouldn't say it's as useful as it used to be. But, you can still go and use it. It's a pretty cool tool. Anyway, folks, the answer here is answer C. That's what you will go and use to go and defragment your hard drive. And realistically, you'll probably never have to go and use this again because this stuff actually happens automatically nowadays. Question 13. An application user in your company received an email indicating the version of the application currently in use will no longer be sold. Oh, goodness me. Users of this version of the application will no longer receive patches or updates either. Which of the following indicates a vendor no longer supports a product? Unfortunately, guys, this is a problem that all of us will face at some point in time. It happens with operating systems. It happens with programs. Sooner or later, these operating system programs are no longer supported by the people that made them. It could just be because, it's too old and they're obviously focusing their attention on newer products. Or it could just be that the person that made them, doesn't exist anymore. Maybe the company closed or, they liquidated. It could be for many reasons. Now, what do we call it, though, when the vendor or the person that made this no longer supports that product? Is it answer A, an AUP? That is short for an acceptable usage policy or user policy. It's a policy of sorts. And you get many kinds of policies, and you do actually need to know all of these for the A+ exam. Not all of the ones I've listed here, though, are policies. So acceptable usage policy is something we don't always see, but if this is in a company, this is probably where you're going to see it. If a user starts the machine, before they get to type in their password on their Windows machine, there's normally like an agreement they've got to agree to. Not all companies have got this. But before they allow you to log in, basically, they'll force you to agree to this agreement, which basically states you are not allowed to use this PC for A, B, and C, but you're only allowed to use it for X, Y, and Z. You're, for example, not allowed to go and do social media, not allowed to go and watch videos, not allowed to go and do this, not allowed to go and play games, only allowed to use it for the purposes of work. It's basically what it comes down to in a nutshell. It's to force the employees to use that PC only for the purposes of work in most cases. That's what an acceptable usage policy is. B is an end user license agreement. We get this with almost anything these days. So if you go and buy yourself a program or a game, or you download a program or a game, usually when you install something on your machine, that's when you have to agree to the end user license agreement. It basically tells you that you're not allowed to go make illegal copies of this game or this program. You're only allowed to use it for this purpose or that purpose, not allowed to do this, not allowed to do that. It basically is just a set of rules as to what the manufacturer allows you to go and do with their product and what not. Answer C is end of life, which is the answer here, folks. So when something, hardware or software, reaches its end of life, we call it EOL, end of life. Way more common of software, and obviously operating systems, we call it end of life. So if the vendor no longer supports it, let's say, if you look at Windows 8, for example, Windows 8 is now reached its end of life. So Windows 10, at this moment in time, is still supported by Microsoft and Windows 11, but it's obviously not going to be much longer than Windows 10 will no longer be supported. It's going to be referred to as legacy then, and it would have reached its end of life. It doesn't mean you can't use it, it'll still work, but if there's any updates or patches needs to happen, guess what? You're not going to get anything. So it's very unsecure, of course, to go and use things that's reached its end of life, because if some guy now discovers some sort of new weakness or some sort of new vulnerability in that software or operating system or game, there's going to be no updates to go and fix that. So watch out. Answer D, guys, is user account control. It's something built into Windows. It's been there since the end of 2007, beginning of 2008. It came out of Windows Vista. Some folks might pronounce this as Vista, or whatever, it depends on the country you're from. So it's user account control. The idea on Vista was great, but it never really worked until they released Windows 7. So on Windows Vista, it will pop up with almost everything. So anytime you try to do any form of system change, anything really, it'll pop up with everything asking you, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? And the whole screen would go black in most cases. From Windows 7, they luckily fixed this. So now it only pops up with some serious system changes. So if you're about to change some serious system setting, then it'll ask you, okay, bro, are you sure you want to go and change this? Other than that, it'll relatively leave you alone. Anyway, folks, the answer is C. Moving you guys on to question 14. One of your technicians is configuring a brand new Wi-Fi router for a client for the first time. What should your technician change first? Now, there are multiple things we need to go and change on this router, but what do we change first? You will notice I added the word first in capital letters there, guys. It's to draw attention to the fact that there's obviously more than one correct answer here. I want to see if you know which one is more correct. What should you change first? Is it the SSID? That is the name of the Wi-Fi. You can obviously make that whatever you want. It's literally used just for people to identify what the name of this Wi-Fi is and who it actually belongs to. It's got no real value in terms of security. It's just something user-friendly that allows us to identify the Wi-Fi network. It's one of the last things you'll probably go and change. Yes, we're probably going to change that, but it's one of the last things you're probably going to go and change. Is it answer B, the default password? Yes, that is the answer, guys. The very first thing you change, whether it be a router, a switch, a firewall, whatever, any network appliance, one of the very first things we always change is the default password. The default password will normally be blank. It'll be the word admin or admin1234 or 1234admin or some sort of other factory name. But we always change that because people like us know what the default password is. And if I know what it is and you know what it is,
Obviously, any other person out there will also know what that is. Any person that's worth their salt in IT will know what that is, which means they can hack you. So we will always change the default password first, and now you can go and take your time to go and set up the rest of the settings. Answer C, encrypting. That's obviously still very important. It's not the first thing you should go and do, but it is something very important you should go and do. You should definitely go and add encryption to your router. So you get obviously WEP, WPA, WPA2, and now more recently WPA3. So you'll probably have to go and choose WPA2 or WPA3, which is the more secure ones. Not the answer here right now, but encrypting is something important to go and do. It's just not the first thing you're going to go and do. Answer D, the default IP address. Yes, that's also something you need to go and change, but it's not the first thing you're going to go and change. The default IP for most routers and stuff is normally going to be 192.168.0.1 or 1.1. Now, the reason why we changed that is because most new network devices obviously have that same default IP. And as soon as you're going to introduce a second device or a third device, there's going to be an IP conflict. So to avoid a potential IP conflict later down the line, we change the default IP address. So we change that to anything else but the default one. It's up to you what you go and change it to. So yes, change that. You should definitely go and change the encryption. You should definitely go and change the default IP. And yes, you can go and change the SSID. All four of these are things you're going to go and change. But the default password is the first thing you're going to go and change, guys. Moving you guys on to number 15 here. You notice an employee or possible non-employee going through the recycle bin. Which of the following threats is this? Now this recycle bin they're talking about, guys, is a physical recycle bin. It's not necessarily a digital one. It could be, but it's usually going to be a physical recycle bin. It's probably one of those bins you'll find in your office environment underneath someone's desk. It's not limited to that. It could be an actual trash bin in the office. It could actually be an actual bin outside the office as well. Either way, this threat is referred to as the same thing. What is it? Is it phishing? No, guys. We know what phishing is because I explained that earlier in a different question. Phishing is when I phone you, email you or something, and I pretend to be someone you know, in most cases, and I try and trick you into giving me important information like username and password or something. Spear phishing, we also explained that earlier. It's the same as phishing, except I'm targeting someone specific, and I probably have a bunch of information I can go and use to hopefully persuade you into thinking that I am who you think I am. You know, I'm going to go and get personal information about you, like your social security number, your ID number, residential address, and I'm going to present that to you in my threat here, or my attack now, in the hopes of tricking you into thinking that I actually am the bank. Answer C, dumpster diving. Yes. And I did briefly explain this one earlier. So when someone goes through your trash, normally the bin's underneath your desk, but it's not limited to that, it's because they want important information they can later go and use in a later attack. So dumpster diving is often done so that later down the line they can use that information they found in something like a spear phishing attack. So that is obviously a threat. We do not want people going through our trash. So in certain company environments, you'll find it's actually quite common practice, or best practice, quite frankly, for people to go and shred documents. So to avoid people from going through the dumpsters. And then the last one there, D, impersonation, which is just another way of saying spoofing. In IT, we call this spoofing, forging something. Forging an email, forging a MAC address, an IP address, or whatever. That's just impersonation. So this is very much the same as an earlier question we had, except we called it spoofing, and then now we're calling it impersonation. Same thing, guys. Potato, potato. Question 16. You need to prepare a laptop running Windows 10 for a newly hired employee. Which of the following methods should you use to refresh the laptop? Alright, so by reading this question, we can kind of assume that this is a second-hand laptop. It has previously been used by somebody, most likely another employee, and we want to kind of hand it down to a new employee. So normally what happens in a lot of companies is when we hire a new employee, they kind of get the hand-me-downs, is what we call it, the hand-me-downs. And the people that's been there for some time, they will get the new laptops and desktops and stuff. I wouldn't say that's what happens in all companies, but it is something I see that happens a lot in companies. Now, before we can just go and hand this second-hand laptop down to this new employee, we need to kind of sort of prepare it first. We don't want this new employee to see stuff they're not supposed to. It needs to be as if it's a new laptop, even though it's second-hand. So it needs to be a new, fresh copy of Windows 10 or Windows 11 or whatever. So how can we get a new copy of Windows 10 or Windows 11 on this machine? Can we go and use an in-place upgrade? No. An in-place upgrade assumes you've already got an operating system on there, and it simply upgrades this operating system to a newer version. It does not necessarily make it a new, clean, fresh copy though. So in-place upgrades sometimes have the tendency to, well, depending on what options you choose, of course, to keep certain things. They'll keep the programs, keep the settings you have, keep the data you've got on that machine. So that's generally the purpose of an in-place upgrade. It assumes you've got an operating system. You need to normally stay in the same architecture. So if you're running 32-bit, you can only upgrade to 32-bit. If you're running 64-bit, you can only upgrade to 64-bit. So stay in your lane in terms of architecture. And whatever edition you're running, you need to kind of sort of try and stay in your lane there too. So if you're running Enterprise Edition of Windows 10 and you want to upgrade to Windows 11, you need to try and preferably go to Windows 11 Enterprise. You want to stay in your lane in terms of architecture. You want to stay in your lane in terms of edition. If you would like to change architecture or edition, then generally you need to go and do what we call a wipe and load. It's a new, fresh, clean copy of Windows 10 or Windows 11 or whatever that you're going to be installing. So in-place upgrade is not going to achieve the task here, guys. It's not going to refresh the laptop. It's probably going to keep some stuff. Answer B. Repair the installation. No. Repairing the installation is if normally there's a corruption of some kind, it doesn't want to start, or a virus has messed up something in your operating system installation files. So that normally, once again, assumes you've got an operating system installed, there's something wrong with it, and you're trying to fix it. It's not going to go and refresh it to a new clean copy where you've only got Windows and nothing installed, no data, no nothing. So A will not achieve that. B will not achieve that. Answer C, a clean install. Yes. So that normally entails you wiping that hard drive, formatting it or something, and installing a new, clean, fresh copy of Windows 10 or whatever it is you're trying to install. So far answer C is correct here. Looking at answer D, a full scan of an antivirus. Yeah, that might, take care of any viruses you may or may not have on the machine, but it's absolutely not going to refresh this laptop in any way. Operating system wise, it's still going to have the same operating system. All the applications that was installed will still be installed. All the data that was on there will still be on there and all that. So that's not going to change that. So the answer is and remains answer C, folks. Moving on to 17 here. The company of one of your clients does not allow USB drives to be available in workstations. An exception, however, needs to be made for one user. You change the policy for the one user. Which of the following commands should you run next? Alright, so this policy, guys, is a group policy. Granted, there is multiple ways you can go and tackle this problem. So when it comes to blocking and allowing users from using USB drives, I prefer to go and use the registry to go and do that. I personally find that more effective. But there is multiple ways. You can go use the registry, you can use the BIOS, you can use group policies. There is many ways to solve a problem in IT. So in this specific instance, it seems the technician is using what we call group policies. Now, if I'm going to go and change the group policies for this one specific user, generally all it needs to be done is this person in real life actually just needs to go and restart the machine. As soon as they restart the machine or they start it up the next time, as they type in the password or just as they type in the password, it's going to say updating group policies, blah, blah, blah. And then whatever changes have been made via group policy, it will obviously take effect from that point forward. But sometimes we want these changes to take effect immediately. If that's the case and you're in a bit of a rush, you can go run a command prompt command that is gp update. That basically forces group policies to go and update immediately. So the answer here, you probably know what the answer is now because I just said it. It is gp update. It forces group policies you've just changed to take effect immediately. The users do not need to restart their PCs first. It will take place immediately. It's not something we do often, but if it's a change you made and it's very important, maybe it's a security related change, then you might need to go and force this change to take effect immediately, in which case you can go run the gp update command. As for answer A, when we know the answer is B, answer A, check disk. That is to go and scan the hard drive for, potentially corrupt clusters or sectors. It's similar to defrag, although defrag is more organizing your hard drive, where check disk goes and checks for damaged clusters and sectors and stuff. You can go run check disk via the GUI, so you can go and right click on your hard drive via my PC or this PC or something, and you can go to the tools tab, where you'll find the check disk tool, and you'll also find the defrag tool. Defrag, as we discussed earlier, is now kind of redundant, but check disk, not redundant at all. We can still very much use that. Now, it's not something we normally run via the graphical interface because it's very limited in the sense of options. So it's actually very common for us to go run the check disk command via command prompt. So you go into command prompt, you make sure you're on the drive or the flash drive or whatever you want to go and run this command on. You type check disk, and then in command prompt you can actually go and add a couple of parameters. So these parameters will tell it, for example, go and dismount the drive first, try and repair the drive, try and fix the drive, parameters like that. As for answer C, disk part, that's to go and partition your hard drive, subdivide it into smaller pieces. So you can think of this as slicing a pie into pieces. At the end of the day, the pie will still occupy the same amount of space, but it's being sliced into different sections, pieces. So you can go and partition a hard drive into multiple sections. This is generally used for organizing stuff, but it can be used for multiple purposes. And then the last one there, ipconfig. That's a command we run in command prompt that will show you that specific machine's basic networking configuration. You can go and type ipconfig /all, which will show you the same information, but way more. But ipconfig on its own will show you the IP address, subnet mask, and maybe the default gateway, and that's pretty much it. Doesn't show anything more than that. So it's very, very basic networking information about that specific machine that you're running the command on. Moving you guys to question 18. Someone who is fraudulently claiming to be from a reputable bank calls one of your company employees. Which of the following describes this incident? Now, I apologize if I pronounce some of those words incorrectly, but like I said before, I'm not actually English, so yeah, forgive me. Anyway, so which of the following describes the incident? Is it spear phishing? No. Twice in this video, we've already explained what spear phishing is. That is when I've got certain information about a certain individual. I'm targeting someone specific in a company, probably an IT individual or a manager. I'm targeting someone specific, and very often you'll find that we've got specific information about this individual to make it more believable. I've probably done dumpster diving, gone through their trash, gotten some information about them that the average person would not know, and then I'll contact this individual and pretend to be someone or something that they know and feel comfortable with, and they might believe it because I'm going to present them with some information over the phone or via email that, that the other persons would normally not know. So that's spear phishing. Spoofing, we know, that is forging something, or impersonation, as we said in that one question earlier. So we're not trying to impersonate something here. We're not forging something here. We're definitely not doing spear phishing. So it's definitely not A. It's definitely not B. Is it possibly vishing? Vishing is something I did mention earlier. It was not mentioned as a possible answer, but I did tell you guys that phishing has subcategories, one of which is vishing, another one which is called quishing. Quishing, I think that's how you pronounce it, is when we go and use QR codes. Vishing is when I use voice. I'm going to phone you or this potential victim, and I'm going to pretend to be someone or something that you feel comfortable with, and I'm going to try and get in details out of you. So if you look at this question again, someone who is fraudulently claiming to be from a reputable bank, I can't pronounce that word, calls one of your company employees, which the following describes this incident. That could potentially be vishing, guys, because it's via a phone call, is it not? So far the answer here is C. Answer D, spyware. Well, like the name tells you, it's used to spy on the individual here. So you get actually multiple categories of spyware, and you get even subcategories of spyware. So spyware is actually an umbrella term. So you get keyloggers and many, many other kinds of spyware. So we're not spying on someone here, guys. The answer is and remains answer C, vishing. Right, moving you guys along to question 19 here. One of your fellow technicians installed Windows 10 on a workstation. The workstation only has 3.5 gigabits of usable RAM, even though the technician installed a whole 8 gigabits. Which of the following is the most likely reason this system is not utilizing all of the available RAM? Now, we did actually cover this earlier in a previous question. I think it was... I stand to be corrected. I think it might have been question 4 or question 5. Somewhere around there. But we did cover it in the beginning of this video. So I hope you guys remember there's certain things that can limit your RAM. There's things out there where you can have a lot of RAM and you might not be able to use all of it. What causes that? Can you remember? Looking at answer A, the system's memory is failing. No. If any RAM chip or memory was failing in the system, you would continuously get crashes. The screen would keep flashing blue, whole system would crash, and this is known as a blue screen of death. So yeah, the system would definitely crash. So even if you have multiple RAM chips and it's just one of them that's failing, the system would continuously keep crashing until you go and remove this chip or replace the chip. So it's absolutely not answer A. Answer B, the system is utilizing a 32-bit operating system. Yes, guys, remember a 32-bit operating system limits how much RAM you've got that's actually usable. So regardless of how much RAM you've got, it limits you to somewhere between 3.3 gigs and 4 gigs. So some manuals and courses and stuff will tell you it's 3 gigs. Sometimes they'll tell you it's 4 gigs. But in reality, it's about 3.3 gigs. But here you can see it says 3.5. So in general, if you have some sort of limitation, somewhere in the ballpark between 3 gigs and 5 gigs of RAM, it's usually because you or this user in question are using a 32-bit operating system. So the answer here indeed is answer B, guys. Looking at answer C, though, the system is missing updates. No, updates will absolutely not cause that. Missing updates might cause the system to be less secure, sometimes a bit unstable, but it's definitely not going to have any effect on your RAM. Answer D, the system requires a restart. No, same as updates. Sometimes the updates won't take effect until you restart the machine. Sometimes some sort of settings on the system won't take effect, or some sort of drivers on the system won't take effect, but it will absolutely not affect your RAM in any way. So it's definitely not possible. So the answer is and remains B. Looking at question 20 here, guys, which of the following would prevent unauthorized access to a mobile device if it was left unattended? So this could be something like a phone, a tablet. Now, what can help prevent somebody from gaining access to that device if it was left unattended on something like a table? Is it answer A, a BYOD policy? That's a bring your own device policy. No, guys. That's a policy we use in companies if people bring their own device to the company for the purposes of work. So if you bring your phone, your tablet, your laptop to the office and you plan on using that device that belongs to you for the purposes of work, that is when we have a BYOD policy that says what you can and cannot go and use that device actually for, and in what manner you can actually go and use that for. So it's got nothing to do with this. It's not going to prevent unauthorized access in any way or any manner. Looking at answer B, a PIN code. Yeah, well, that can certainly prevent people from gaining access. I wouldn't say it's going to stop them, but it can help prevent it. It's going to make it difficult. So if you just leave a phone there on a table somewhere and you've got a PIN code, yes, a PIN code on there can definitely kind of slow them down to a large degree. So far the answer is B. Answer C, an antivirus software. No, it's got nothing to do with preventing unauthorized access. Antivirus software, whether it be on a computer of sorts, whether it be on a mobile device of sorts, which is the actual question here, it's going to scan for malware, but it's not going to prevent unauthorized access. That's not its purpose. So it's definitely not answer C. Answer D, operating system updates. No, they might make this phone or whatever mobile device this is or whatever computer device this is, it might make it more stable, it might make it more secure, but it's not going to prevent unauthorized access. So the answer is and remains the PIN code. That's the only viable answer here, folks. Right, let's have a look at question 21. You receive a help desk ticket from a user who is unable to update a phone. You investigate the issue and notice the following error message: insufficient storage space. Now, while analyzing the phone, you do not discover any third-party applications or photos. Now, this is kind of weird. Which of the following is the best way to resolve this? Now, guys, something that takes place a lot lately is, and I've seen this happen a lot on phones, this even happens on the wife's phone, is you'll buy a phone, especially if it's not the biggest flagship phone, it might work perfectly fine in the beginning, but the storage space on there becomes an issue. So in the beginning, supposedly it's supposed to be enough for whatever you need on that phone, and you'll find often they give you room to go and expand, in terms of storage. You can go and add what we call an SD card, huge SD cards at times. And apparently when you receive things like updates, let's assume you do not install any games or any programs, you do not take any photos, then theoretically your space on that phone is supposed to remain the same. Whenever you receive updates, which you're definitely going to receive, supposedly they're supposed to take the same amount of space. So yes, it'll make the system more secure, it's going to update it and make it more stable, but it's not supposed to occupy more space. And yet it does. I'm telling you now, you can go and check it, check me on this, it does take more space. So you might have had lots of free space on this phone or tablet, and for some reason, you keep running out of space, and you keep running out of space. It's because of the updates. The system keeps getting bigger and bigger, even though it's not supposed to. They say it's not supposed to, but yet it does. This becomes a problem. So eventually you're going to keep uninstalling your games and your programs. You might even delete your photos and videos, and you might move it someplace else, but the problem is not going to go away. So yeah, what is the best way to resolve this issue? So if we read the question again, it says a user who is unable to update a phone, you investigate the issue and notice that the following error message, insufficient storage space. So the storage space is the issue here. Now, they mentioned again there, while analyzing the phone, you do not discover any third-party applications or photos. So there's no games or programs installed, there's no photos or videos, and yet the person's running out of space. What can we do? Is it answer A, exchange the phone for a newer one? Well, technically that actually is going to solve your problem, but it's a little drastic. So you would see there it says, which of the following is the best way to resolve the issue? Now, exchanging the phone, yeah, that actually is going to solve your problem. Actually, that'll probably be the better one, but hey, that's not the answer here. Answer B, upgrade the onboard storage. That's not possible on the phone. Answer C, allocate more space by removing factory applications. You can try, I mean, that's not the best way. It's a possible answer, but it's not the best way, and often you'll find there's minimal applications you can go and remove, and the ones you can remove are often applications that you actually need. So, yeah, B is not possible. A is possible, but it's quite drastic. C is possible, but that's also quite drastic. So it's between A and C at the moment. Answer D, move the factory applications to external memory. That is something you can go and look at. I don't know how you do that. I know some phones does have that ability. You'll find a lot of people will go and move their third-party applications, their photos and videos, all of that they have power over, that they'll move to external memory like a memory card. But apparently you can go and move your built-in applications from the factory as well. I've never done that. I don't know how you do that, I'm going to be honest. But it is possible on some phones, and it'll definitely free up some space. So that's something you guys can look at. That is the best way to resolve this specific issue. It's the cheapest way, the quickest way, and the easiest way. I'm not saying it's the only way. I mean, yes, you can go and remove some factory applications, but then you're sitting without them, and they might potentially be important. You can also go get a new phone, but that's quite drastic because now you're going to spend some extra money. So the cheapest way, quickest way, and the easiest way is answer D. Just move them to an external storage. Looking at question 22 here, guys. You see a file that is requesting payment to a cryptocurrency address. Which of the following should you do first? Once again, the word first there, guys, is in a different color and in capital letters. I'm trying to draw your attention to the fact that there may or may not be more than one possible answer here that's actually correct. Is it answer A, quarantine the computer? So far, yes. Normally when you see any form of message on any person's machine asking for payment in the form of cryptocurrency, it's usually a symptom of ransomware. There's a very, very good chance that this machine or this device has been compromised with something like ransomware. It encrypts normally everything on that machine, and they have the tendency to spread over the network like wildfire. So the very, very, very first thing you want to do is to quarantine that machine immediately. So if it's plugged into a network cable, unplug the cable immediately. If it's connected to Wi-Fi, disconnect from the Wi-Fi and take it a step further and tell that machine to forget the Wi-Fi, because it doesn't help you disconnect from the Wi-Fi and it just auto-connects back to the Wi-Fi. That's not going to help one bit. So disconnect from the Wi-Fi, tell that device to forget the password to that Wi-Fi or forget the network entirely. We want to quarantine that machine. Your next action is going to be to back up anything that you can possibly still back up, but you're probably not going to be able to back up anymore. So usually you're going to find that everything on that machine is probably going to be encrypted, or at least most of the stuff would have been encrypted. Looking at answer B, disable system restore. That's also something you should definitely go and do, but it's not necessarily your first action. It's one of your first actions, yes, but it's not the first action. The first action is to quarantine that machine to prevent it from causing any further damage. Your second action is to go and disable any and all forms of backup. So whether it be a system restore that honestly just backs up the system, or whether it be a full-blown backup of sorts, either way you disable all and any forms of backup to prevent them from getting compromised or to prevent them from getting compromised any further. These backups, whatever backups they are, they normally take place automatically, and what we want is we do not want the backups to go and back up the virus or whatever this might potentially be. In this case, probably ransomware. Otherwise, your backups are going to get compromised and you're not going to be able to use your backups, or you're going to be able to use less of the backups. So that's one of the reasons why we disable the backups as quickly as possible. So your first action here so far, guys, is going to be to quarantine the computer. That actually is the answer, by the way. Your second action will be to go and disable system restore and any and all other forms of backup. Looking at answer C, update the antivirus definitions. That's also very important, but that's probably going to be the third one. So ironically, it's third on the list here, but that's going to be the third one. So you want to make sure all and any forms of security software is up to date with the latest definitions, and you want to scan the living heck out of that system and see, maybe you get lucky, maybe they can remove this malware, but the chances are, if it's ransomware, they're not going to be able to remove it, guys. Answer D, boot the system in safe mode. That's got nothing to do with this. So safe mode is normally if the system does not want to start at all. Putting in safe mode is not going to make any difference. So if you've got ransomware, putting in safe mode is not going to make any difference. Putting in safe mode will start the PC up without most of its drivers, without most of its services. But if it's got ransomware and it's already encrypted, it's not going to make any difference. So the first action you guys should take here is to quarantine the computer. Then you disable any and all forms of backup. Then you go and update all your security softwares. And then you go and scan of all your security softwares. And then hopefully, maybe if you're lucky, you can go and recover. If that fails, then you're going to have to go and use your backups to go and restore. So hopefully it's not too far gone. Anyway, moving you guys on to question 23. One of your users connected an external hard drive, but is unable to see it as a destination to save files. Which of the following tools will allow the drive to be formatted? Okay, so now we know why the drive does not want to be detected. It's plugged in, but it has not been formatted. It's got no file system. So which of the following tools in my list here, guys, can we go and use to, well, format this hard drive? Is it answer A, disk management? Yes, guys. Disk management is a built-in tool in Windows, both on the client operating systems as well as the server operating systems. It lists all the drives in your machine. Whether they be virtual, whether they be physical, whether they be flash drive, whether they be external, whatever. It lists them all. You can go and partition them. You can go and format them. You can go change the file system on them. Disk management is the tool we go and use normally for that. Yes, there are third-party tools out there that we can also go and use to achieve this task, but it's usually going to be disk management. So the answer is answer A. Answer B. Disk cleanup is to go and free up some space on the hard drive. You know, so if we're running out of space and we want to clean up some space, that's generally the tool we're going to go and use. Not something we normally use, but that's generally what it's used for. Answer C, disk defragmenter, as we've said earlier in the video, is something we no longer need to go and do because it actually takes place automatically once a week or once every 2 weeks. So from Windows 10 all the way to Windows 11 and onwards, it takes place automatically. It organizes your hard drive. And obviously, the more organized your hard drive is, the more optimal your machine is going to run, the faster it's going to find whatever it's looking for. So it's going to give you the illusion that your machine is actually faster. Answer D, device manager. So this is a tool we go and use to see all the physical devices that's installed on a computer. Whether it be your hard drive, whether it be your graphics card, whether it be a webcam, whether it be some sort of sound device. Device manager shows you all the devices that's actually on your machine. There, you have the ability to go and see if they need drivers. You have the ability to go and install drivers and change drivers, update drivers, remove drivers, and anything to do with drivers. So it's in essence a list that shows you all the devices that's physically installed on your machine. All the hardware devices that's installed on your machine. So the answer is and remains answer A, guys. Disk management. Looking at question 24. You discover that user input has been captured by a malicious actor. Which of the following malware types is most likely being used? Alright, so what's happening here, guys? User input is being captured. What does that sound like? Now the term malware, for those of you who don't know, is not something specific. It's an umbrella term we use, which includes a lot of things. It includes viruses, Trojan horses, spyware, adware, ransomware, and rootkits, and. So in this umbrella, or under this umbrella called malware, what could it be that's capturing users' input? Is it spear phishing? No. Phishing is to try and trick the user into giving information. Spear phishing is to try and trick a specific user to giving information. But it's not capturing users' input. Is it crypto miners? No. Crypto miners are machines, normally very high performance machines, that are used to go and solve cryptographic algorithms in exchange for, well, cryptocurrency, something like Bitcoin. So they solve these very complicated, cryptographic algorithms, mathematical algorithms, and by doing so they get rewarded with cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. So it's definitely not A, it's definitely not B. Answer C, ransomware. Something we just discussed a couple of moments ago. So ransomware has the tendency to encrypt everything on your machine, and it demands that you or the user pay a ransom, normally in the form of cryptocurrency. Nowhere here do they say anything about, a ransom being denied, things being encrypted, or anything to do with cryptocurrency. Nada. So it's not A, it's not B, it's not C. So by process of elimination, we already know the answer is D here. A keylogger. Now, a keylogger, guys, is a form of spyware. Spyware is one of the many things we find under the umbrella called malware. And in this subcategory called spyware, we find subcategories of spyware, one of which is a keylogger. And believe it or not, you actually get subcategories of spyware, but that's not a topic here right now. So a keylogger records the keystrokes of somebody. So when they go and type something on their keyboard, whether it be on a phone, tablet, laptop, or desktop, those keystrokes are recorded, and normally the perpetrator will try and get a hold of something of value, something sensitive like a password, a username, anything of value really. So the answer is and remains D, folks, keylogger. Moving on to question 25. One of your technicians would like to make use of an answer file during an installation. Which of the following installation types would require the use of an answer file? Alright, so I think for this to make sense, we first need to kind of sort of elaborate on what the cheese and answer file actually is. So you get what we call high-touch installations, you get what we call low-touch installations, sometimes referred to as light-touch installations, and you get what we call zero-touch installations. A high-touch installation is where you or the user do everything yourself manually. So whether this be an operating system installation or a program installation, you do everything yourself manually the old school way. Low touch, sometimes referred to as light touch, you spell it like light mayonnaise, L-I-T-E. So that means there's some level of automation involved in this installation, whatever installation this might be. So you might have to make sure the machine is turned on, make sure it's on the network, maybe start the installation or deployment process, and after that it's going to for the most part happen automatically. Zero touch, you can kind of guess what that is if you look at where we're going with this. It's 100% automated. Now folks, with light touch and zero touch, let's look at light touch. It's got some level of automation, this deployment or installation. So if you look at something like an operating system installation, how does it know how many partitions you want or need? And if you want multiple partitions, how does the installation know how big these partitions should be? Depending on how many you want and all that. How does it know on which partition to go and install the operating system? How does it know what language to choose for you? Because obviously you can go and choose the language. How does it know what region to go and choose for you? What time zone to go and choose for you? And. How does the installation know the answers to all of these questions? That, folks, is the answer file. So that is something we normally use from a low-touch installation, but it can potentially be used in a zero-touch installation as well. So it's basically a file of sorts that's got answers to questions. Since we are not going to be there as human beings to go and answer these questions, so normally when we go and do an installation manually of an operating system, at some point in time, it's going to ask you, hey, what language do you want? And I'm going to go and choose English or whatever language I prefer. At some point, it might ask me, hey, what time zone are you in? And I'm going to go and choose my time zone and so on and so forth. But if we are not there, how do we answer these questions? The answer file does that. So it's a file that's been pre-populated with the answers to these questions. That's basically what it is in a nutshell. So these answer files are referred to as unattended answer files. So you kind of know what the answer is now. The answer is answer D, guys. We refer to it as an unattended answer file, but in reality, the name can actually be anything. I can call this banana if I want to. The file itself can actually be called anything, but we refer to it as an unattended answer file. It's got a specific extension. It's called XML. So in the exam, there's a possible question you may or may not get about this. They might say something along the lines of, which one of the following is an example of an answer file? And it'll give you 4 possible answers, much like what we see in front of us right now. 2 of them will say something along the lines of unattended answer file, unattended answer file, and they'll have totally random extensions behind them. And you'll see 2 other answers that's got weird random names, but one of them you'll find has the extension of XML. So this question in the exam, should you be the unfortunate soul that gets it, is to test and see if you know that even though we refer to it as an unattended answer file, the actual answer file will always have an XML extension. The name in reality does not matter, as long as it's got an XML extension. So in the exam, folks, if they ask you which is the one of the following is an example of an answer file, look for the one that's got an XML extension, regardless of its name. But in this specific instance, of this specific question, when we say which one of the following installation types would require the use of an answer file, it's going to be an unattended installation, which means there's some level of automation involved. If it's a clean installation, that doesn't tell us much. It just tells us it's a clean installation of Windows. It's not going to matter what architecture I choose. It's not going to matter what edition I choose. It's a clean installation of Windows. That's it. But it could be unattended. It could not be unattended. Clean doesn't tell us anything. Upgrade also doesn't tell us anything either, besides the fact that I have an existing operating system on there and I need to go and upgrade to a newer version of that operating system. I just need to stay in my path or stay in my lane in terms of architecture. I need to stay in my lane in terms of edition, but it doesn't tell me anything whether this is automated or not. So A doesn't tell me anything, B doesn't tell me anything, C is just to go and repair an existing operating system. It's not to go and do any form of unattended. So A, B, and C is unrelated. The only answer here, folks, is D.
Alright, so without wasting any of your time, moving you on to number 26 here, guys. One of your users has been on leave for 3 weeks and is now unable to connect to the office network. Their Windows allows them to log in, but they cannot access internal or external websites, nor can they access any resources on the network. Which of the following is most likely the problem? Alright, so the fact that I've added that word in capital letters for you guys, and in a different color, I don't always add it in different colors, it depends on how I feel. Sometimes I just forget. I'll be honest, sometimes I just forget to go and put it in a different color for you guys. Anyway, so the fact that it's in capital letters and a different color, that means there's more than one possible answer here. Let's see if you guys can figure out which one is the more correct one, if I have to put it in simple terms. Looking at answer A, the user's password expired while they were on leave. Now guys, I'm going to rule that out, because if you look at the question here at the top, let me highlight a specific section for you guys. It says their Windows allows them to log in, but they cannot access internal or external websites. Now the fact that they can log in means that their password might not have expired. It is possible that the password is not the problem here. I'm not saying it's not, but it's very possible that the password is not the problem. So far I'm going to rule out A for now. Looking at answer B, the user clicked on a link in a malicious email. It's plausible, but these symptoms do not exactly match that kind of behavior. Normally, if someone clicked on a link in a malicious email, they will find that, for example, everything on the machine might possibly be encrypted if it's ransomware. If it is spyware, then you just won't know because they're spying on you. If it's adware, you'll see a whole bunch of unwanted ads. If it's a virus or a Trojan horse, it's probably going to harm your PC in some sort of way. So basically what I'm saying is the symptoms don't add up. So for now, I'm also going to rule out answer B. Looking at answer C, the user has enabled airplane mode. Okay, so that is actually more plausible than answer A. A heck of a lot more, actually. It's a heck of a lot more plausible than answer A. So if you guys don't know what airplane mode does, you'll find that most tablets and phones have that function these days.
The idea is it's supposed to turn off most communication on a device. I want to say all communication, but there's actually cases where some communication actually does still come through. So there's a myth that, phones and tablets can supposedly interfere with an airplane's instruments and, potentially even cause it to, well, not end very well. Let's just put it like that, because I don't want the YouTube popo on my case. Now, because of this myth, I don't know if it's true or not, because what do I know about airplanes? I'm an IT expert, not an airplane expert. But because of this myth, phones have what we call an airplane mode. You'll find that usually if you get yourself onto a big plane, they will very politely ask you to turn your phones off, or any devices, please turn them off. And they will do the same thing when you're about to land. Sometimes they do allow you to turn it on in mid-air, but at the very least, when you're taking off and when you're landing, they will request you to go and turn off your device, because apparently it can go and interfere with the instruments of the plane. Yet to be determined if this is true or not. So if you are a pilot, or if you are in, I don't know, the airplane industry, please let us know in the comment section down below if this myth is true or not. I think a lot of us would like to know if this myth is true or not, so please just let us know in the comment section down below if you happen to know if this is true or not. Anyway, so the point of this function on your phone or your device is to basically turn off most communication on your device. You'll find you cannot receive phone calls or make phone calls. You cannot receive or make SMSs. Well, make SMSs. Let me just say send SMSs. You cannot use Bluetooth. I think NFC has stopped working. Wi-Fi will be off. So I think there is cases where certain things might actually still come through. But for the most part, most of your communication as device has been turned off. That's the idea. Now, the problem of this pesky feature, I mean, it's a great idea, is a lot of people tend to forget to turn it off. So you get on a plane, great. You turn it on, great. Now you get off the plane and you forget to turn it off, and now you're wondering why your phone doesn't want to work. Oopsie daisy. There's also a lot of cases I've had with users where they were maybe not on a plane. At some point in time, they maybe changed some sort of setting on their phone, and they purely by accident went and turned on airplane mode, or maybe their child played with their phone and turned on airplane mode, and now they don't know why nothing on their phone doesn't want to work. Meanwhile, the phone is on airplane mode. Now, if we look at the question again, guys, it is possible that it might be answer C. Looking at the question at the top, it says one of the users has been on leave for 3 weeks. Okay, that doesn't tell us much, but it is possible that they might have been on a plane. And then it says this user is now unable to connect to the office network. Okay, so that could be airplane mode. It says that Windows does allow them to log in, but they cannot access internal or external websites. That could also be airplane mode. Nor can they access any resource on the network. Also possibly airplane mode. This can actually also be something to do with DNS, although I did not mention anything regarding DNS in these answers. So let's rule out DNS for now. But just an FYI, it is possible sometimes the DNS can also cause this. That's not what the point of this question is, though. So for now, the answer is C, because C has been known, or airplane mode has been known to cut communication. Looking at answer D, the user connected to a captive portal while traveling. No, guys. If you don't know what a captive portal is, I think the best example I can give you is if you go to the mall, or let's just say a coffee shop perhaps, you'll find that often these establishments will say there's free Wi-Fi. But if you try and jump on this free Wi-Fi, it's gonna ask you for a voucher or a code of sorts, which kind of, it doesn't feel free, now does it? The idea here is they want you to come into the establishment and purchase something first. A cup of coffee, or hot chocolate, a meal. So once you've purchased something, then they will give you a code or a voucher of sorts that you can go and put in on this portal, and that's going to give you access while you are in the establishment. Now that portal you landed on, that you have to go and put this code in or whatever the voucher is, that is a captive portal. It's also very common on this captive portal for them to go and basically list a couple of rules. They'll say you are not allowed to use this internet for this or that, and in this manner or in that manner. That's basically what a captive portal is in a nutshell. It's not the only example I can give you, but I can probably give you lots of examples. But for now, I don't want to waste too much of your time. So for the sake of time, guys, the best answer here is still answer C. The user has enabled airplane mode, and that's why they cannot access any form of network. If they turn it off, you'll find that they can actually access networks again. Anyway, moving on to question 27. You are finalizing a new workstation for a user. Oh joy, that's always nice. The user's PC will be connected to the internet, but will not require the same private IP address each time. Okay. Which of the following protocols will you most likely utilize? So basically what they're saying here, or what I'm saying in this question here, is you're not going to need to use the same IP address every time you go onto the internet. Now normally inside your home or inside your office, you have a unique IP address. This is called a private IP address. As soon as you go outside onto the outside world, the internet, then you've got a public IP address. Now, inside your home, that private IP address, you can go and allocate it manually, which is called a static IP, sometimes called a fixed IP, or even a manual IP, or you can get this automatically, which is generally the case. We call that a dynamic IP address. Either way, whether you go and allocate this manually, whether you get it automatically, it's still a private IP address as long as it's in your home or your office building. Now, if I do not need to use the same private IP address every time I go online, what protocol could I possibly go and utilize here? Is it answer A? Yes, guys, that actually is the answer. DHCP is a role we normally find on servers, but this is actually something built into routers as well. Its purpose is to dish out an IP address inside your personal network, inside your private network. This is a private IP address, but it's also called a dynamic IP address because it's a random IP address. This DHCP, whether it be on a server or a router, it's got a set amount of IP addresses it can dish out. We call this the pool, or as some folks call it, the scope. It could be 50 IPs, could be 100 IPs, it could be hundreds or even thousands of IPs. The point here is that's your range, that's your pool, that's your scope. It's got a set amount of IP addresses, and you or this person will normally get a random IP address from the DHCP from that pool. Now, if you look at the question, it said we can have a random IP, or we don't need the same private IP. So that means we can actually go and use the DHCP. So if this is in your home environment or a very small office environment, the DHCP is probably going to be built into your router. That's the one you're most likely going to go and use. If this is a medium or a large size company, yes, we do have a router, and yes, it probably does have DHCP built into it, but we probably went and turned it off because we want to have a DHCP that's got more functionality, more features, more toys and goodies and stuff. So to get that, we're going to go and add a role on a server called the DHCP role. It gives us the same functionality as the one on a router, except it gives us way more than that. Anyway, guys, the answer is A. Looking at DNS, that is a role we can go and add on a server. It doesn't mean you will go and add it on your servers. Its purpose in a nutshell is to convert IPs to names and names to IPs. It's not the only thing it does. It does something called name resolution, which is technically the same thing. So when you go onto a website, using a browser, let's say you go to youtube.com using a browser of your choice. Your PC and your browser does not actually know what youtube.com is or where youtube.com is. So when you go and type that into your browser for the first time, your PC will contact something called VDNS and say, hey, listen, bro, my user just typed in something called youtube.com. Where is this? What is this? And your DNS will go and pull something called a record, and it's going to go and check what the IP address for youtube.com is. It's going to give that to your machine, and your machine will now know where to go on the internet. That's basically the purpose of DNS in a nutshell. Once again, not the only thing it does, but the topic here is not DNS per se. I'm just trying to elaborate why this is not the answer. Answer C, RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol is what that is. That is something that allows you or the user to go and remote connect to another machine or another server. There's multiple ways we can go and do this, and one of the ways is actually something that's built into a lot of Windows operating systems. It's called Remote Desktop. So from your machine, you can go and remote desktop into someone else's machine or another server, assuming you've got remote desktop in your operating system, and assuming they've turned this on their machine, and assuming they've allowed it in their firewall on their machine. So in a nutshell, you can go and take control of another machine if they have allowed it and if they've turned it on. Looking at answer D, SMTP. That is a protocol, folks, that we use for email. It's not something we see used as often nowadays, but it is something we use for email nonetheless. So this is specifically for sending email for the most part. So in the old days, we used to use this a lot. Nowadays, it's more common to see people using other things like Gmail, Outlook, Office 365, and so on and so forth. So B, C, and D has got nothing to do with IP addresses and even less to do with private IP addresses. A is the only answer here that's got something even remotely to do with IP addresses, and that is in fact the answer, folks. Question 28. One of your users would like to enter their username and password only once. Which of the following best describes when a user enters a username and a password only once? So the user will still have to go and prove they are who they claim to be here in a nutshell. But how can they go about doing this only once? What can they do which will allow them to only do this once and not be prompted for this constantly and basically be harassed? Is it answer A, MFA, multi-factor authentication? No, guys. Multi-factor authentication basically means you or the user will be prompted in more than one way to prove you are who you claim to be. You will have to prove in more than one category, or should I say more than one factor, that you are who you claim to be. A category or a factor could be something you know, like a password, a PIN, or a phrase. It could be something you have or possess, like a bank card, smart card, thumb fob, or even your phone, because the phone receives a one-time PIN, or you've got to go and acknowledge something on this phone, maybe via some sort of authenticating app. A third category of factor could be something that you are, which is normally biometric in nature. Fingerprint scan, retina eye scan, facial recognition, or even voice recognition. Those three categories I've just mentioned, or should I say factors, are the three most common categories and the most widely used ones. They're absolutely not the only ones, though. There's definitely lots of other ones. Now, multi-factor authentication, folks, has unfortunately nothing to do with allowing a user to only type the username and password in once. It's going to actually, in fact, ask them to go and enter it more. Answer B, inheritance. That has normally got to do with permissions in most cases. It's not limited to permissions, but it's usually something we'll see with permissions. So if you go and configure something on one item, possibly a folder perhaps, that permissions, or whatever it is, will get passed down to other objects down below, like subfolders possibly. So that's generally what inheritance comes down to. So it's also got kind of sort of nothing to do with this specific question. So the answer is not A, it's not B. Answer C, SSO, single sign-on is what that is. And that actually, guys, is in fact the answer. Single sign-on will still ask the user to prove their identity. But instead of harassing this user around every possible corner on every possible application, basically asking them to prove they are who they claim to be, you're only going to ask them once for a username and a password or whatever authentication you're using. Once they prove they are who they claim to be, as long as they keep their session open, they will not be harassed again. But if they re-establish a new session, then of course they would have to go and prove their identity all over again. So the answer here, guys, is in fact C, in case you're wondering. D, authentication, is just to prove you are who you claim to be or what you claim to be. But that's all it is. It doesn't say anything with, how often you need to do it, how you need to do it. Authentication on its own is very vague. It's a very vague term. Authentication is just for me to prove I am what I claim to be or who I claim to be. But it doesn't say anything about how I'm doing it or how often I'm doing it. Nothing. So the answer is and remains C, folks. Single sign-on. Question 29. You need to assist a remote user with an issue on their PC. Which of the following will allow you to see the issue along with the user? There's lots of tools out there, guys, that allows you to go and assist the user remotely. But some of them, unfortunately, kicks the user out, off their PC to the logon screen, and it'll even give them an error message that says you've logged on from somewhere else, or something like Remote Desktop actually does that. Now, unfortunately, by me saying that, I've just eliminated answer B. Oopsie daisy. Now, with Remote Desktop, yes, I can assist a user remotely, which is what the question requires of us. But Remote Desktop does not allow me and the user to see the exact same issue at the exact same time. If you were to go and use Remote Desktop, I'm going to get to answer A in a moment, guys. Remote Desktop is going to kick that person off their machine to the logon screen where they go and type in their password. If they were to type their password back in, it's going to kick me out. And if I type it in, it's going to kick them out. So unfortunately, just one of us two can see the screen at any given time. So the answer, I can already tell you, is not going to be answer B. Looking at answer A, VPN, that is Virtual Private Network. Yes, that is a way to go and remote connect to something somewhere, but it's not going to allow you to go and remotely control something and see something at the same time as a user. VPN can be thought of more as digitally teleporting you somewhere. It's not going to allow you to see live what's going on someone's machine or some sort of device somewhere. No. If you are someone that, for example, normally works at the office, and today you decide to go and work from home, but now unfortunately due to you working from home, you cannot access stuff on the network that you would normally be able to access, like servers and whatever. VPN is going to solve that problem. If you VPN to the office, it's going to be as if you are at the office, as if you're on the office network. You're not controlling a specific device or server or something remotely. It's simply teleporting yourself digitally somewhere else onto a different network. And if you go run a search on your network now, yes, you're going to find that server. So the answer is not A, it's not B. Looking at C, SSH, which is secure shell, that is the remote, secure encrypted remote way to go and remote connect to a device. This is often used on things like, routers and blah, blah, blah. But this is also something we normally do in a console view. So it's not going to allow you and the user to see real time what's going on the same machine. It's normally going to be a one-person kind of scenario, so only you would be able to see what's going on. And it's normally in a console view. You're probably going to end up using something like PuTTY. There's multiple tools, but PuTTY is normally the tool of choice that we're going to go and use to go and remote connect to something like a router to go and control it. Not really something we use on PCs. I mean, you can, but it's not really something we use. So folks, by process of elimination, the only answer that's left here is answer D, VNC. And yes, that is in fact the answer. So VNC, along with things like AnyDesk and along with other tools like TeamViewer, is in fact a tool you can go and use to go and remote connect to another machine, a person's personal client machine, or even a server. You can see real time, live what's going on their machine, and they can still see what's going on their machine. They can use their mouse and keyboard to show you what the issue is, and you can see what the issue is since you can see real time what's going on in the machine. And you can even take control of the mouse and keyboard. You basically just need to tell them, hey, let go of the mouse, and then you can take control of the machine, and you can go and take over and fix this machine. So VNC allows you to do that. AnyDesk allows you to do that. TeamViewer allows you to do that. There's lots of tools that allows you to do that. The only tool that I've seen that's covered in the A+ course though is VNC. The only tool they'll ask you about in the exam as well is VNC. So you will not get asked about TeamViewer in the exam. You will not get asked about AnyDesk in the exam. The only tool in the course and the only tool in the exam is VNC. But I did want to point out to you guys that there are other ones out there that we actually use just as commonly, and that's AnyDesk and TeamViewer and lots of other tools as well. Anyway, folks, moving you on to question 50. Slowly but surely we're making some progress here. You have a user who has a phone that has become very slow and laggy. After you investigate it, you find multiple malicious applications on the phone, so you did a reset on the phone to remove them. That's actually one of the easiest and best ways to go and do it. You then installed MDM software. Now, if you don't know what MDM software is, MDM is short for Mobile Device Management Software. You get lots of software out there that could be classified as MDM, but one of the main ones we use, one of the most common ones we use, that 99% of companies use, is something called Microsoft Intune. Anyway, so we'll get to that in just a second. The rest of the question says, which of the following should you do to prevent this from happening again in the future? Choose all that apply. Now you'll see I've given you 6 answers to choose from, and I want you guys to choose more than one. I'm not specifying whether I want 1 answer, 2 answers, or 3 answers. For all we know, there's no answer. It could be that all of them is correct. Now I can give you a hint. It's not going to be a matter of all of them is correct. It's not going to be a matter of none of them is correct. I definitely want more than 1 answer from you guys. At least 2 answers. So I'm giving you guys a big fat tip here. Anyway, getting back to MDM. And the example I gave you is Microsoft Intune. That is a tool, guys, that we use to go and manage devices remotely. It was originally designed to help us manage people's phones and tablets. But nowadays we use this for phones and tablets and laptops and desktops. We use this for lots of devices. You can see what device someone is using. You can see what the physical specs of this device is. You can see the operating system they're running on it, whether it's Windows or otherwise. You can see the updates, drivers, and programs they've got installed. Heck, you can even go and install or uninstall updates, drivers, and programs. You can even go and remote wipe a device. The only catch here is normally this device in question needs to be enrolled into this environment called Intune for you to be able to control it. Otherwise, this could be seen as hacking. So now you know a bit more about what an MDM software is. Anyway, so if we look at the question again, folks, it said, which of the following should you do to prevent this from happening again? So remember what was the issue? They had malicious applications on their phone, and the way you resolved this was to go and reset the phone, which was a bit drastic, but it solved the problem nonetheless. How can we prevent this from happening again? Is it answer A, disable biometric authentication? No, that is security. It's got nothing to do with applications. In fact, disabling that's actually going to put this person more at risk. So it's got nothing to do with the question. It's actually going to make matters worse. So it's not answer A. Answer B, prevent a device root. That is plausible. I'm not going to say it's the answer just yet. Let's have a look at the other answers first. But preventing someone from rooting a device is very plausible. So on Android, we call this rooting. On Apple devices, we call this jailbreaking. It means you unlock this device as hidden developer options. And that means you can go and fiddle with way more options on this phone or device. You'll find if you go to settings, there's all kinds of hidden developer options, all kinds of extra programs and stuff you've got access to, which could technically even be used for hacking purposes. And this can be used to go and install all kinds of weird, funky software, which is sometimes deemed as malicious. So answer B, plausible. Answer C, require a PIN to unlock the screen. No. Yes, that's going to make it more secure, but it's not going to prevent this particular user from installing malicious applications. So that's not exactly going to solve the immediate problem at hand here. So it's not A, it's not C. Answer D, prevent GPS spoofing. No, that's got nothing to do with malicious applications. Answer E, enable developer mode. Developer mode is actually the exact opposite of what we want to achieve here. So it's definitely not E. So developer mode would basically be the same as rooting the device or jailbreaking the device. So that's when we say you have now enabled developer mode. So that's technically the exact opposite of answer B, quite frankly. So answer B is the most likely answer here so far. It's not A, not C, not D, definitely not E. Answer F is left here. Answer F says block a third-party application installation. Yes, that is also a good answer. So far, guys, the answers here is B and F. That actually is the answers. So by blocking third-party application installations, I'm forcing the user to only use the applications that comes with the device. Or at the very least, forcing them to use pre-approved applications that I've now vetted and approved. So if they go to any other third-party application and try to install it, it's not going to work. So that means, since they cannot install third-party applications, they cannot get any potential malicious software that might come along with these applications.
Question 31. You have a user that has a BSOD. So that, guys, is short for blue screen of death. So you have a user that has a blue screen of death that appears on their workstation monitor. The user immediately presses the power button to shut down the PC, hoping to repair the issue. The user then restarts the PC and the blue screen of death reappears. So the user now contacts you. Which of the following should you use to determine the cause? Now, looking at the list that I've provided you guys down below, there is one specific answer I'm looking for. There's a second one which is very flippin' close, but it's not the actual answer. Should you go and use the services? No, guys. The services, if you were to go in there on your machine, that simply shows you the back-end services that's running on your machine, but it will not tell you what is the problem here. It doesn't do anything along those lines. Could it be answer B? Event Viewer. Very close. Some of you guys might even think that is the answer. Event Viewer is something we generally go and use to find a problem on a machine. This could be a client machine or a server. So if I don't have a cooking clue what the problem is, I could potentially go into Event Viewer and I could potentially go and look at the error that was generated. And yeah, who knows? That might lead me to the problem. So far, B is a very plausible answer.
Answer C, system configuration. Now that just shows you what the configuration of the system actually is. It's not going to tell us what is wrong with the system. Answer D, stop code, also known as stop error, also known as blue screen of death, also known as memory dump. The actual name is stop code though. So when you or this user get that blue screen of death, it's actually an error message. If you were to somehow magically stop this error, in place, and let's say you were able to actually read the freaking error, or take a snapshot of this error and go and do some research, that error is a stop code, guys. It's supposed to tell you what's wrong with this machine. Now, in case you don't know, that is actually the answer here. Now, in case you thought event viewer is the answer, remember, why do we go into event viewer? We go in there to see an error or find an error. The error you're looking for is, drum roll, the stop code. So the stop code is ultimately what's going to tell you what's wrong, whether you found it via the event viewer or whether you managed to actually grab a screenshot of it when it flashed on your screen for a couple of seconds. Either way, the stop code is ultimately what actually tells you what's wrong. The event viewer is just what allows you to find the stop code, but it's not actually what tells you what is wrong on the machine. So the answer, guys, is in fact answer D, stop code. Question 52. One of your clients has a kiosk which is running Windows 11, relies exclusively on a numeric keypad to allow customers to enter their ticket numbers but no other information. So basically what they're saying is you can only enter digits, numbers in here. If the kiosk is idle for 4 hours, the login screen locks. Oh boy. Which of the following sign-on options would allow any employee the ability to unlock the kiosk? Now remember, guys, the only input you can give this machine is using the numeric keypad, which means it's from 0 all the way to 9. That's the only input you can give this machine. Alright, now knowing that, which of the following sign-on options would allow you or any employee the ability to unlock this kiosk? Is it answer A, requiring the employees to enter their username and password? No, because normal usernames and passwords could very well contain letters and weird symbols. Remember, we can only use the numeric keypad from 0 all the way to 9. We're not able to enter any of the normal alphabetic characters, and we're definitely not able to enter any weird special symbols. We can only use from 0 to 9. So A is completely out. Is it answer B, require the employees to use their fingerprints? No. Remember the question said relies exclusively, there's the word, exclusively on a numeric keypad. So we do not have some sort of fingerprint scanner that's going to allow us to go and scan the fingerprints of employees. So A is out and B is out. Answer C, use a PIN and providing it to the employees. That is very plausible, guys, because a PIN is normally a number of some kind. It could be a 4-digit number, 6-digit number, possibly longer, possibly shorter, but most commonly it's going to be a 4-digit number, something between 0 and 9. So we're going to be using strictly numbers. And since we only have a numeric keypad, C is actually possible. On to D, setting up facial recognition for each employee. No, remember we only have a numeric keypad. Nowhere in this question does it mention we've got something like a fingerprint scanner. It doesn't mention we've got a normal keyboard. It doesn't mention we've got a webcam or any form of camera to go and scan people's faces. It only says we've got a numeric keypad. And I'm looking at the available answer. The only one that actually, kind of corresponds with that is going to be answer C, a PIN. So the answer is C, folks. Question 53. Which of the following physical security controls can help someone prevent laptops from being stolen? So it's a physical security control. Is it answer A, encryption? No. That is security, but it's not physical. That's going to encrypt something like a hard drive, a flash drive. It's not something physical, guys. Is it answer B, passwords? Also good security, but it's digital. It's not physical, so it's not A or B. Is it answer C, equipment locks? Yes, that is a physical form of security. We don't know yet if it's the only answer here that's physical security, but that is a physical form of security. It looks like a bicycle chain, in case you guys are wondering, very similar. And we do get these for desktop PCs, but it's more common to find them for laptops. Some laptops have got a special hole in them which you can go and stick this cable into. It looks like a bicycle chain. And you're able to go and basically chain this laptop to a table or something of sorts, preventing people from stealing this laptop. So far, the answer is C. Looking at answer D, multi-factor authentication. That's great. It's very secure, but it's digital. It's not physical. Answer E, bollards. Yes, that is indeed physical security, but it's got nothing to do with protecting laptops. Bollards is something you'll go and use to control the flow of traffic. So you can go and use that outside to prevent vehicles from parking in certain places or driving into certain things. But it's got absolutely nothing to do with preventing the theft of laptops. So the only answer here that's physical is C and E, and C is the only one that actually applies to laptops. So the answer here, guys, is C. Moving you guys along to question 54. An employee at your company calls your help desk regarding an issue with their laptop PC. The user claims that after a Windows update, they can no longer use certain locally attached devices, and a reboot has not fixed the issue. Which of the following should you perform first to fix the issue? Now, the fact that I've added the word first in capital letters, and once again in a different color, that should tell you that I have more than one answer here that might possibly be correct. I want to see, just like CompTIA, if you guys know which one here is more correct. So this individual, they claim they've done a Windows update, and now for some weird funky reason, locally attached devices for some weird reason don't actually work anymore. So what could possibly fix this? Could we go and check for updates? That is plausible, but if this update literally just took place, chances are there might not be an immediate another update available that's going to fix this issue. You might, or this user might have to wait a couple of days, couple of weeks, possibly months even, before there's an update available that's going to remedy this issue. So checking for updates could theoretically fix the issue, but it's not going to be the best solution, and it's definitely not going to be an immediate solution. So A, I'm going to say is plausible for now. Looking at answer B, roll back the updates. That is more plausible than A already. Rolling back the updates removes those updates that have just been installed. Now, since this user claims this happened right after the update, we can kind of sort of assume that it's very likely to be the updates. And by removing these updates, by simply doing a rollback, that could very likely solve this problem. Now, it's obviously not the full solution. Rolling back the updates, yes, that's going to fix the issue. But it's probably going to go and install its updates again. So if you were to go and do it that way, guys, just keep in mind you're going to have to go and actually turn off updates momentarily for the time being, so that it doesn't go and reinstall its updates. And maybe a couple of days later or a couple of weeks later, you can go and try and install it again and see if there's any new updates. Answer C, disable the Windows Update service. Yeah, you could do that, but that's not going to fix the issue. Rolling back the updates, that actually fixes the issue. And once you have fixed the issue, yes, then you can go and disable Windows Update. But if I already have the issue at hand here, disabling Windows Update is not going to make any difference. In fact, that's actually going to make matters worse, since I'm going to probably be waiting for a new update to come out, so that update will hopefully fix my issue. So C is actually going to make matters worse, unless you use that as a follow-up to answer B. Answer D, antivirus scan. No, updates are not always malicious in nature in the sense of being malware. It is possible, and this has been reported in the past, but it's very plausible that this update is just causing instability issues. It's causing some sort of stability issue or compatibility issue. It's not necessarily malware. So running an antivirus scan is probably going to come out empty. So the answers that's plausible here, guys, is A and B. B being the better one. Rolling back the updates will immediately fix the issue. It's going to guarantee that this issue will be fixed. Checking for updates, yeah, it could fix the issue, but probably not immediately. This person's probably going to have to wait a couple of days, weeks, or months even, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll fix the issue. So the answer is B, but just keep in mind in real life, if you are going to go and do that, you might need to go and turn off Windows Update right after that. Otherwise, it's just going to go and install those updates right afterwards again. Moving you guys along to question 35. One of your users is experiencing frequent malware symptoms on a Windows system. The user has tried several times to roll back the state, but the malware persists. Which of the following would most likely resolve the issue? Alright, so we've got a user. They've got malware symptoms on their Windows machine, which means they probably do have malware. And they've already tried to roll back the state. So they probably tried to use something like System Restore. And although that's very effective with a lot of malwares, this does not seem to solve this particular one. So what would most likely resolve this issue? Would encrypting the hard drive solve that problem? No. That's going to give us security, but it's not going to solve a malware issue. So it's definitely not A, folks. Quarantining system files. No. Quarantining system files is not going to make any difference. Remember, this system has already been compromised. You could try quarantining the whole system itself from the network to prevent this malware from potentially spreading across your network. But quarantining the system files themselves on this machine, I think it's a little late for that. So A is out, B is out. Answer C. Uninstalling applications one by one. Yeah, guys, normally when you've got malware on the system, by just uninstalling applications, it is possible that this might resolve the issue, but it's very unlikely. So sometimes one of the applications, this could be a game or a normal application, sometimes one of the ones you've installed is the one that's causing these symptoms. So it is very possible that if you go and uninstall all the most recently installed applications, it is possible that the symptoms might go away. But 8 out of 10 times, they're not going to go away. It is possible, but unlikely. Looking at answer D, re-imaging the workstation. Yes, that's the answer. So the one that's most likely to resolve the issue here, guys, is going to be answer D. If answer D was not available, then yes, I would have chosen answer C. But since D is there, re-imaging the workstation is going to be the best bet. That's basically like formatting the machine, in case you guys don't know. So we're going to go and wipe that machine, install a new fresh copy of Windows, and then we know the malware is completely, it's gone, because you completely wiped the machine in question. Moving on to question 56, folks. Which of the following would be an example of MFA? In other words, multi-factor authentication. Now, before we go and tackle these possible answers, guys, remember, authentication is to prove you are who you claim to be or what you claim to be. So if I say multi-factor authentication, I'm basically asking you to prove in more than one category, or should I say more than one factor, that you are who you claim to be. Each factor / category is something like maybe something you know, pin, phrase, things like that. That is a category or a factor. Something you have or possess, like a bank card, smart card, thumb fob, or even your phone. That is a category or a factor. And something you are, in other words, biometrics. That is something like a fingerprint, retina eye scan, facial recognition, voice recognition. That is also a factor or a category. Now, if I'm asking you for multi-factor, I'm asking you to prove your identity in more than one category. Has to be 2 different categories or more. If they're in the same category, it doesn't count. So if I ask you for a password and a PIN, like answer B there says, that's actually not multi-factor, guys, because a password is something you know, and a PIN is also something you know. They fall into the same category, or should I say the same factor. That is single factor. It's not multi-factor. If we were to look at answer A there, a smart card, that is something you possess. A PIN is something you know. So yes, answer A is indeed multi-factor, so A is indeed correct. Answer B, we've already eliminated. Answer C, a username, that's something you know. A password is something you know. So answer C is eliminated because they both fall into the same factor. Looking at answer D, fingerprint scan, that is something that falls into biometrics. And facial recognition is something that falls into biometrics. That is the same factor. So C, both of those items, same factor. D, both of those items is same factor. And the same applies to answer B. The only answer here, folks, that's got 2 different factors is answer A, a smart card and a PIN. Moving you guys along to question 37 here. One of your users is unable to access a web-based application. You verify that the computer cannot access any web pages at all. The computer obtains an IP address from the DHCP server. You verify that the user can ping the local host, the gateway, and known IP addresses on the internet with response. So guys, so they do have an IP address. So much so that they're actually even able to ping various things on the network, but they cannot access a web-based application. Which of the following is most likely the reason for the problem? Could it be answer A, folks? The wrong VLAN was assigned. Now, VLAN, in case you guys don't know, is short for virtual LAN. If this user was on the wrong virtual LAN, they would most certainly not be able to ping these things they're talking about. The only problem they've got here is they're not able to access a web-based application. But if you go look at IP address wise, they can still go and ping things that are on the same network. So yeah, they're definitely not on the wrong VLAN, or should I say wrong network. It's not answer A. Answer B, the firewall is blocking the application. It is plausible that the firewall is blocking this application. I mean, the fact that they can still go and ping and stuff, but, you know, B is plausible. I wouldn't say likely, but plausible. So we'll leave it up to plausible for now. Answer C, incorrect DNS address was assigned. Now that is very plausible, guys. So if you remember what a DNS does, it converts from IPs to names and names to IPs. It does something called name resolution. So when you go to a website and your machine doesn't know what this website is or where it is, it contacts something called the DNS. And the DNS is going to go and pull what we call a record. And in that record, it shows the IP address of this website. Now, if you're going to try and go to this web-based application, it could be that the DNS doesn't have a cooking clue what this web-based application is or where it is. So it could be a DNS-related issue. So in other words, it's a bit of a miscommunication, if you will. So answer C is also plausible, actually a little bit more plausible than answer B. Looking at answer D, the browser cache needs to be cleared. Also actually a little bit plausible, which is why this question says most likely reason for the problem. So B, C, and D are plausible actually, guys. But out of those three answers, C is the most likely reason to cause this problem. B, you know, that's also plausible. D, that's also plausible. But C is the most likely. Taking you guys through to question 38 here. You remove the virus from a user's device. The same user returns the same device a week later with the same virus on it. That's actually very common, guys. Which of the following should you do to prevent future infection? You know, this question, the reason I put it in here is because this is actually something I've had with a lot of my clients. You will go and fix a machine where it had malware on it like this one or not, and now it's working, works perfectly fine. You might even get the user to acknowledge that it's working, and literally a couple of days later or a week or so later, the user would come back with the exact same issue. So usually, I'm not saying this is always the case, but usually the user is the problem. Whatever they are doing is causing this issue. Anyway, so enough of me ranting here. The question says, which of the following should you do to prevent future infections? Should you disable system restore? No, guys, that's actually a tool you can go and use to hopefully actually restore the system back to where it was. For all we know, that might be the tool you used to actually go and fix this machine in the first place. So disabling system restore is a bad thing. We only disable system restore after we verify there is a virus on it, and that's just to avoid, you know, any potential backups from getting compromised. So once you get this machine back from the user, yes, you can temporarily go and disable system restore, but to prevent future infections, that's definitely not going to take care of that. It's got nothing to do with that, actually, in fact. Looking at answer B, educate the end user. That is very plausible, because since we now know the user is in fact the problem, educating them might actually solve this problem. So maybe they are going to one of those unsavory websites. That's the terminology CompTIA likes to go and use, but we know what websites these are. They're probably going to one of these unsavory websites, downloading one of those games or programs or movies or episodes. They're downloading it from one of these not so nice websites, and they're probably getting the same virus from the same place in the same way. So what we need to go and do here is tell this person, hey, listen, bro, stop going to that website. Stop downloading that stuff from that website via these means, because that's what's causing this machine to give you these shenanigans. I'm just using this as an example. I'm not saying it was one of those websites, but this is just an example, guys. So far B is the answer. Looking at answer C, remove some of the user's privileges. Yeah, we want to do that. I mean, believe me, I love to go and do that, but that's actually going to cause more issues because these days you'll find that most people are in fact admins on their machine because they legitimately do need to install stuff from time to time. They legitimately do need to go and change stuff on the machines from time to time. So by removing their privileges, you're actually going to cause more issues because now every 5 or 10 minutes, this person is going to call you because they need you to come and type an username and password and. So it's going to solve the problem, but it's actually going to cause more issues than anything else, so it's not C. On to D. Install the latest operating system patches. Although that might solve some problems, but it really depends on what this virus is and what it actually targets. So I doubt that's going to solve the issue. At the end of the day, the best way to tackle this problem, guys, is to educate this person so they hopefully go and stop doing it. Since whatever they are doing, it seems to be the problem here. So educate the user. The weakest link in your security in any company is always, believe it or not, the user, guys. Taking you guys through to question 39 here. You notice that a server on the company network has extremely high CPU utilization. Upon further inspection, you see that the server is consistently communicating with an IP address that is traced back to a company that awards digital currency for solving hash algorithms. Which of the following is most likely used to compromise this server? Now, depending on how much you guys paid attention in the beginning of this video, you might actually know the answer to this question. So if your machine goes and solves complicated hash algorithms or complicated mathematical algorithms and they get rewarded, in some sort of cryptocurrency, that normally means your machine is a crypto miner. And usually we use the graphics cards in these machines to go and do that. Yes, we can use the CPU, but the GPU of a graphics card is normally way more powerful than the CPU of a PC, which is why most of these people will go and use graphics cards instead of CPUs to get the job done. They're able to go and do way more calculations, and they're able to solve way more complicated algorithms, and that means obviously in the day you're going to make way more, money, since cryptocurrency is a form of, money. Anyway, looking at the question again, folks, it says, which of the following is most likely used to compromise the server? Is it answer A, crypto mining malware? Yeah, that is the answer here, guys. Is it answer B, ransomware? No. Ransomware, they've got very clear symptoms, and that is to go and encrypt everything on this machine. They generally have the habit of spreading on the network and encrypting everything else on the network and demanding a ransom in the form of cryptocurrency. So they demand cryptocurrency. They don't award you cryptocurrency. And they also have this pesky habit of encrypting everything on your machine. So B has got nothing to do with this question. Answer C, keylogger. That is a form of spyware, one of many, and it's used to record the keystrokes of you or somebody else in the hopes of capturing something of value, something sensitive. So it's a form of spyware, but it's got no effect on your CPU or your graphics card, guys. So C's got nothing to do with this question. On to D, spyware. That's pretty vague because spyware, we now know, consists of multiple things, one of which is a keylogger. And spyware is once again just used to spy on the user. It doesn't actually have any effect on the CPU or the graphics card. It's just used to spy on someone in hopes of getting something of value. So the only answer that's plausible here, guys, is answer A. This machine is a crypto mining machine, or it has been infected by something, making it a crypto mining machine and doing someone else bidding. Right, moving on to question 40, folks. A user is unable to access several documents saved on a work PC. You discover that the files were corrupted, and you must change several system settings within the registry editor to correct this issue. Which of the following should you do before modifying the registry keys? Now guys, generally as a rule of thumb, I always tell people to stay the heck out of the registry. If you don't know what you're doing, stay out of there. But if you absolutely must go in there to go and change something, what should you do first before you go and do any changes in there? Is it answer A, update the anti-malware software? No. Nowhere here in this question do they mention anything to do with malware or any form of malware symptoms. We're simply mentioning there's a bit of corruption taking place here, and we want to go and fix a couple of keys in the registry. There's nothing mentioned here about malware. So updating anti-malware or installing anti-malware, that's going to have no effect here whatsoever. So answer A is out, guys. That's wrong. Answer B, create a restore point. So far, that is a very good answer, guys. Before you do any serious system changes, like fiddling in the registry, you should make a system restore point. It's like a time machine point. So that if you make a boo-boo and something goes wrong, and you realize later, oh, dear me, I made a mistake, you can always go and use something called system restore and basically send this PC back in time to an earlier state before you made that mistake. So B is like a safety net that you're putting there for yourself in case you make a boo-boo. So far B is a very good answer. Looking at answer C, run the PC in safe mode. No. Running a PC in safe mode starts this machine up without most of its drivers and without most of its services. So that's pretty good for troubleshooting. It's pretty good for removing certain types of malware, but it's got nothing to do with changing the registry. You do not need to start the machine in safe mode to be able to change the registry. You can do that the normal way. It's not going to make any difference. Looking at answer D, roll back the system updates. Now, unfortunately, guys, rolling back system updates, it's not going to make any difference with files that's been corrupted. It doesn't do anything like that. So system updates, if they cause instability issues, yes, you can go and roll them back. But if something is corrupted, they're corrupted. It's not suddenly going to be uncorrupted by rolling back system updates. So you're going to have to go and fix the actual issue at hand here. And the only way to do that is to go and, well, restore to an earlier state, which does not seem to be an answer here. So you're going to have to go and do it manually via some sort of way, which seems to be the case here. But before we do that, we should probably go and make a backup point. Give ourselves a little bit of a safety net here in case the poo-poo hits the fan here, so we can at least go and fix our own little boo-boo.
Alright, moving on to question 41, guys. You are troubleshooting an issue with a computer that contains sensitive information. You determine that the computer needs to be taken off-site for repair. Which of the following should you do next? Is it answer A, delete sensitive information before the computer leaves the building? Can you imagine? That user would lose their mind if you just go and delete random sensitive information. I mean, that's worse actually in some cases than actually seeing the sensitive information, because maybe they don't even have a backup. You cannot go and delete someone's sensitive information. You might ask them to go and, I don't know, hide it in some sort of way, encrypt it in some sort of way, but you cannot go and delete it. That's just downright ridiculous. So A is completely out. Answer B, check corporate policies. Yeah, it's plausible. Some corporates do have certain policies with regards to taking machines off-site, so plausible. But before you do that, you might need to do something else. So I'm going to say B is plausible for now. Answer C, get authorization from the manager. Now, that's not necessarily your manager unless you work for just one company. If you're the kind of technician that works for various companies, I used to be one of those guys where I would go to lots and lots of companies and I would effectively be the IT for many companies. Now, in those situations, I would normally have to get the permission of the manager, not necessarily my manager, but whoever's in charge there, that, hey, listen, brah, I need to take this machine off-site for me to be able to do the necessary repairs. May I do so? And if they give me the green light, yes, I'm going to go and proceed. So far, C is also plausible, actually a little bit more plausible than B. Once the manager has given me the approval, then I'll go and check any corporate policies they may or may not have. So, I don't know, C is a little bit more plausible. Answer D, remove the hard drive and then send the computer for repair. No, guys. If you go look at the question again, it says you're troubleshooting an issue with a computer that contains sensitive information. Now, this computer, normally the whole operating system and everything is installed on the hard drive. So the chances are very likely that this is a digital issue. Some sort of digital issue. And if you're going to go and remove the hard drive, how are you going to know that this issue is resolved? If it's a hardware related issue, then yes, you can potentially maybe remove the hard drive. But you'll never really truly know if the problem has been resolved until you put the original hard drive back. So, but if this is now a digital issue, and keep in mind, in this question, they do not state whether this is a hardware issue or a digital software related issue. They do not specify that. So it's safe to assume it might be an operating system
or a software or some sort of digital related issue. And if that's the case, and I go and remove the hard drive now, how do you expect me to fix the machine if the hard drive is where the issue is actually now at? It doesn't really make any sense now, does it? I literally need the hard drive to be present in the machine so I can go and fix this machine with the hard drive, because that's where the issue actually is. So by leaving the hard drive behind, I'm actually leaving the problem behind, technically speaking. So D is completely out, folks. So the answer here is C. B is slightly plausible. That would have been my second choice. But C is the most likely one. That is the next one that you're going to go and do. Without wasting any time, moving you guys on to number 42 here. A user's smartphone data usage is well above average. The user suspects an installed application is transmitting data in the background. I mean, isn't that the truth? That's normally always the case. The user would like to be alerted when an application attempts to communicate with the internet. Which of the following best addresses the user's concern? Is it operating system updates? No, guys, that might make the system or this device more secure, might make it more stable, but it's not going to inform the user when something in the background is trying to communicate in the background or use more data or transmit via using some sort of data. It's got nothing to do with that. Looking at answer B, antivirus. Antivirus, although it might be very secure, its job is not to keep an eye on your data. Its job is not to inform you when something communicates in the background and when it starts using data. So antivirus, it's going to go and check for malicious software, viruses, Trojan horses, ransomware maybe, but it's not going to have any effect on your data. It's not going to check when some sort of application in the background may or may not be using data. So antivirus is out. Answer C. Remote wipe. Absolutely nothing to do with this question. Remote wipe is something we will normally go and do if a device is stolen, although it doesn't really work very well with that, or if a device is misplaced, or if someone worked for the company and they were using their own personal device for the purposes of work, and you kind of sort of feel like they might have some sensitive information on this device after they've left the company. Then you can go and do remote wipes. So if someone left the company, or if the device is misplaced, or in some very rare cases if the device is stolen, yes, you can go and do remote wipe. But it's got nothing to do with your data usage or informing you of your data usage. So by process of elimination, guys, the only answer that's left here is answer D. Answer D is a firewall, and yes, that is the answer. A firewall not only blocks certain things from, connecting to the internet, so it doesn't just block URLs, IP addresses, and services and stuff. It can also inform you, depending on what device this is and what kind of firewall you have. Some firewalls can in fact inform you when something is trying to communicate with the outside world. So this is a phone, or a tablet, or a whatever. In this case, it's a smartphone. The firewalls you have on some smartphones these days, it will in fact inform you and say, hey, listen, bro, you've got the following application that wants to connect to the internet. Do you want to allow it? And if you say, hang on a moment, this is not something I'm aware of, this is not something that I've authorized, you can go say, no, I do not allow it. So yes, some mobile smartphones do have firewalls to do this, but unfortunately a lot of smartphones, guys, do not have any firewall. You will have to install a firewall afterwards, and they don't always have this functionality. So there's certain brands of phones out there that I'm aware of that do have some pretty good firewalls on them. One of them actually being Huawei. Not promoting them in any sort of way, but I've seen the firewalls on those devices are actually pretty decent. Anyway, moving on to question 43. One of your managers at a client's company reports that his staff members often forget the passwords to their mobile devices and applications. Which of the following should you do to reduce the number of help desk tickets? Now, unfortunately, guys, this is an issue that all of us are going to face at some point in time in our IT career. One of the most common issues you guys are going to have to deal with is users constantly forgetting their passwords or constantly logging themselves out. Anyway, so which of the following should you do to reduce the number of help desk tickets submitted? Is it answer A? Increase the failed login threshold. You could do that, but at the end of the day, if they don't know the password, they don't know the password. So whether it's 3 failed login attempts or 100 failed login attempts, In some cases, that's not necessarily going to reduce your tickets. In some cases, you're actually going to make your security a lot less, so you're going to make your computers way more vulnerable, because a hacker can go and try a lot more times now before they'll actually be locked out of someone's system. So A is not the best option here. Answer B, remove complex password requirements. Also not a good idea. Yes, people might actually remember their passwords now instead of forgetting them, but you're going to lose all sense of security here. The whole idea why we force people to have complex passwords, why we force them to have 8 characters, uppercase, lowercase, numbers and symbols, is not just because we're trying to be funny here, guys. It's because of security requirements. Otherwise, if they use normal everyday words as a password, we can go and use attacks like a dictionary attack, where this program or whatever I'm using can go and try actual words in the dictionary as your password. And before you know it, in a matter of mere minutes, I'll be in your account. So, no. We need to have these complexity requirements, so B is out as well. Answer C. Enable multi-factor authentication. Now, although that might be very secure, and that actually is something I recommend you should have in a company, it's not the answer here because it's actually in this specific instance gonna make matters worse. I mean, the whole thing we've got here is people forgetting their passwords. Now you want them to go and authenticate via even more methods? No, that's going to make matters even worse than what they are right now. So once again, just like of question 42, by process of elimination, the only answer that's left here, folks, is answer D. Yes, that's the answer. Implement a single sign-on with biometrics. So people will only be prompted to sign on once, and they don't even have to remember a password because they only need to provide biometrics, something like a fingerprint, something like facial recognition. So they don't have to remember a password. As soon as they hold the camera in front of the face, the device is going to see, oh, it's you. Or as soon as they provide their fingerprint, the device will see, oh, it's you. No need to go and remember some sort of password. So yes, D is in fact the answer, folks. Right, jumping over to number 44 here. A police officer often leaves the workstation for several minutes at a time. Which of the following is the best way the officer can secure the workstation quickly when walking away? Is it answer A, use a key combination to lock the computer when leaving? So far, yes, that's a very good answer. So the key combination they're talking about here, guys, is by pressing the Windows key and the L key. If you don't know what the Windows key is, it's normally located between the Control and Alt key. It's got the Windows flag icon on it. Some keyboards have got 2 of this key and some only have 1. Laptops in most cases only have 1 of this key. So pressing the little flag icon key, which we call the Windows key, along with the L key at the same time, locks the computer. It takes you back to the password screen. Now, in case you're panicking here about anything closing in the background, don't worry, guys, nothing's going to close. Everything that was open is still open on this computer. It's just going to lock it behind a password. So if you are the rightful owner of this machine, all you've got to do when you return is just type in your Windows password and everything's going to continue like normal. So far, A is the correct answer. Looking at answer B, ensure no unauthorized personnel are in the area. I mean, that's plausible, but it's ridiculous. Can you imagine you are this police officer now, and every time you want to leave your desk, you've got to go and peek over your shoulder first and just go and check if there's anybody nearby. I suppose it'll work to a certain degree, but it's just downright crazy. It sounds like a lot of work. So A is better than B. B could theoretically work to a certain degree, but A is better. I mean, at the end of the day, the question says which of the following is the best way, and A is better than B. Looking at answer C, turn off the monitor to prevent unauthorized visibility to information. That's just as ridiculous as answer B. To a certain degree, yeah, I suppose you can block certain people from seeing on your screen. But if you're not there, what is stopping them from literally just turning your screen on? Nothing is stopping them. There's no security whatsoever. So if there's nobody there, nobody and nothing is stopping them from turning your screen on. So C is even more ridiculous than B in my opinion. Answer D. Configure a screensaver to lock the computer automatically after approximately 15 minutes of inactivity. Although that might be a form of security, it's not the worst answer I've seen. It's also not the best answer I've seen, because most of the time if you are this police officer, you're probably going to be back way before the 30 minutes is up. Now 20 minutes, I don't know about you guys, is more than enough time for somebody to go and comfortably sit at your PC, go dig around in your stuff, see stuff they're not supposed to, do stuff they're not supposed to, and obviously as soon as they're active on your machine, that little screensaver timer gets kicked down the road. So if I'm active on your machine, that screensaver is never going to kick in as long as I'm active on your machine. Remember, answer D says specifically after 30 minutes of inactivity. So if you leave your machine for 10 minutes, and after 10 minutes I go and sit down, and I'm active on your machine now, that 30 minutes resets now. So as long as I'm active on your machine, that screensaver is never going to kick in. All I need to do is just sit down by your PC before the screensaver kicks in that 30-minute period, and voila. So B, C, and D is downright ridiculous. The only answer that's viable here, guys, is answer A. Right, moving on to question 45. One of your users connected their laptop to a wireless network and was tricked into providing login credentials for a website. Oh dear. Which of the following was used to carry out this attack? Is it a Trojan? No. A Trojan, first of all, they're actually referred to as Trojan horses. That is when something pretends to be one thing when it's actually something else. It's pretending to be a useful toolbar. It's pretending to be some sort of useful program, potentially a game, but in the background it's actually killing a machine. But it's got nothing to do with stealing people's credentials. And nowhere in this question do we talk about, pretending to be something we're not, hiding our identity, no, we're not talking about that. So answer A is completely out. B is distributed denial of service. So that is when you overload something like a public website or server of so much freaking traffic to the point where it can't cope with the load and it'll time out or just completely crash. This question, if you go and read the question again, it's got nothing to do with that. Answer C, a 0 day. 0 day is normally an attack / vulnerability. It's when somebody or something, normally it's somebody, discovers a new weakness or vulnerability in something today, and they plan on exploiting that, using it, or even selling it today before it gets patched or before there's some sort of solution. That's 0 day. So if you go look at the question once again, it's got nothing to do with that. The only answer, once again, that's left here because of process of elimination is evil twin. Evil twin is when you trick people to go and connect to the wrong Wi-Fi. So you go and get your own little router or access point. You go and duplicate the little Wi-Fi name, in other words, the SSID. You trick people to go and connect to your little hotspot. And now you're going to maybe even get them to go to a certain website, potentially go and provide their username and password. And the whole idea of an evil twin is to try and capture people's usernames and passwords and, all kinds of login details like that. So the answer here, folks, is D. Right, question 46. You are at a call center that handles inquiries into billing issues for multiple medical facilities. You notice that call center agents often walk away from their workstations, leaving patient data visible for anyone to see. It kind of sounds like that police officer question from earlier. Which of the following should be done to best prevent data theft within the call center? Okay, so this is somewhat similar to that police officer question we had earlier, guys. Could we go and install privacy screens? Plausible. Privacy screens comes in many shapes and forms, guys. So if you go look at some of these major offices and major corporate environments, you'll find they've got these cubicles with little dividers in between, and I suppose you can think of that as a privacy screen, or at least one example thereof, where one employee can see on another employee's screen. The problem here is this is a health worker that actually walks away from the workstation. So what's to stop me from just kind of strolling over to your workstation afterwards and just seeing what the heck is going on? So yeah, privacy screen will work while I'm there. While I'm there, it might to a certain degree prevent people from seeing on my screen. But since the whole issue here is the person walking away, no, it's not going to really make any big difference in my opinion, but okay. So we'll just leave A up to plausible for now. B, log off the users when their workstations are not in use. Now that requires you to go and do that manually. So it could work, but for all we know, you're not at the server. So if you're on a server constantly and you're constantly keeping an eye on everybody the whole time, every day, just checking for inactivity, you could go and do that. But that could also be annoying because for all we know, that person is sitting right in front of the screen. They may be inactive for 2 minutes and they're just busy on their phone or possibly have some paperwork, and now suddenly the machine just locks again. That could be very annoying for the user. So plausible, actually a little bit more plausible than A, but I don't know if that's the best option here. Answer C, lock workstations after 5 minutes of inactivity. That's also a good answer, a little bit better than B. So A is plausible, B is plausible, C is plausible, but the further we go, the more plausible it actually gets. So far C is the best one out of the lot here. So if a healthcare worker walks away from the machine after only 5 minutes of inactivity, the machine is going to lock itself. Ideally, I would maybe make that less, but the best case scenario would probably be if they actually lock the machine by pressing the Windows key and L, like we said at that police officer scenario from earlier. But I suppose locking the machine after only 5 mere minutes is not the worst case scenario here. Could have been worse. Looking at answer D, encrypt the workstation hard drives. No, guys, because even though the hard drives might be encrypted using something like BitLocker, for example, once it's unlocked, it's unlocked. And if the person is not locking the machine after they walk away, and there's not some sort of timer that locks it after they walk away, it doesn't really actually matter if the machine is encrypted. So D is actually the suckiest answer out of the lot here. Encryption is good, yes, but only if used correctly. So C is the best answer, B is the second best answer in my opinion, and A is the third best answer. So if I have to go and choose one, I would choose C here, folks. Question 47. A fellow technician needs to install a 32-bit operating system on a computer. Which of the following amounts of RAM is a 32-bit operating system limited to? Now guys, I don't know how much you paid attention in this video, but we've kind of sort of covered this topic directly or indirectly twice in this video, or at least twice already in this video. So a 32-bit operating system, as we very much know by now, it limits the amount of usable RAM. So if I've got 8 gigs or 16 gigs or 32 gigs of RAM, it's going to limit the amount of RAM that's usable. And I think I might have accidentally just given away the answer just now by saying that. So if you've got 8 gigs or more, it's going to limit your RAM somewhere between 3 gigs and 4 gigs. Some folks or manuals or courses will tell you it's 3 gigs. Some things will tell you it's 4 gigs. In reality, it's 3.3 gigs, but that's not what they will ask you in the exam. The answer in the exam is normally, in this situation, guys, going to be 4 gigs. Anyway, moving on to the third last question here, folks. Question 48. The company of one of your clients has an open wireless network. Clients and vendors need to be able to connect to the network without logging in. Your client is concerned that nearby businesses is using their wireless network without their permission. Which of the following will allow your client to address this issue without asking their clients or vendors to actually log in? Choose one answer. You see what I did there? Be careful of that in the exam, guys. Sometimes it might look like you need to choose lots of answers, but sometimes you need to only choose one. They will specifically tell you that. Other times it might look like you need to choose only one, but the question actually requires you to go and choose 2, 3, or they'll just say choose all that apply. So always make sure you read the question carefully. Anyway, so we've got a company here. They're concerned about nearby neighbors, other companies and offices and stuff nearby, potentially piggybacking off their Wi-Fi here. What can we do to kind of sort of prevent that? Could we go and look at changing the SSID? In other words, just changing the Wi-Fi name? No. It's going to take them less than a day to figure out that you've just changed your name, and they'll just go and connect to it again. So A is completely out, guys. MAC filtering, although that might be very secure, it's not necessarily the best solution to this specific scenario. So MAC filtering, as you guys know, we can't exactly go and change the MAC address of a device, or at least that's what CompTIA would like us to believe. So if I go and specify a MAC filter, only devices that I've specifically specified will be allowed here. The problem with this specific question here, guys, is if you look at the question, it says this is an open wireless network. Clients and vendors need to be able to connect without logging in. So if you have actual clients or vendors or any guests coming physically into your building to come and do business with you, you do not want them to struggle with any form of security. Now, if you've got a MAC filter in place, you would have to go and physically approach these people first and say, okay, you know what, sir or ma'am, may I have your device? May I see what your MAC address is? And may I go and add your MAC address to the filter? That's an excruciating amount of work you're creating for yourself. And it's just downright going to look ridiculous and unprofessional when you go and do that. So B is not feasible. It's just ridiculous to go and do it that way. We want people to be able to come into our building, not have to type in a password. So it needs to just be open to the public, basically. But this should only apply while you're in the building. Quite tricky. So we know it's not A. We know it's not B. Could it be answer C? Power levels. So far, yes, guys. Not all access points and routers have got this ability, but some of them do have this ability. So in this specific scenario, if they do not have this ability, I would suggest they just go and get a device that's got this ability. By increasing or decreasing power levels, you can go and choose how far your Wi-Fi range extends. So if this was me in this scenario, I would go and decrease or just adjust the power levels so that this Wi-Fi is basically only accessible within the building. As soon as you go outside the building walls, the signal should no longer be detectable. It should be so weak that you shouldn't be able to connect to it. So you basically have to be within the building to be able to detect the Wi-Fi to begin with. So any nearby buildings, even though there's no password, they will not be able to detect your Wi-Fi, which means they can't jump on your free Wi-Fi. They have to be within range. They have to be within your building. And I fear I might have actually given you the answer here, guys. The answer is actually C here. You can increase power levels, which is not something we do often, but if something or someone is very far away and they complain and moan and groan, they have got poor signal strength, you can always go and increase the power levels. But it's more common to see people decrease the power levels. And normally we'll go and test this. You know, you're going to go and obviously run lots of tests and make sure that this power level is just strong enough to reach the boundary of your building walls. Anyway, so looking at answer D, we obviously know now the answers is not D, E, and F because I just told you the answer is C. Answer D, content filtering. No. Content filtering is something we do where we can go and control what websites people can go and visit or what types of websites they can go and visit. But it's not going to block companies or people from jumping on my Wi-Fi that's got no password when they're not supposed to. Content filtering might block them from going to certain types of websites, yes. But the issue at hand here is not the types of websites they're visiting or which websites they're visiting. It's the fact that they're getting on my Wi-Fi to begin with. So D does not address the correct issue. It's a issue, but it's the wrong issue. Firewall, very much the same can of worms as the content filtering here, if I'm being perfectly honest. So a firewall, you can go and control your network to a certain extent. You can go and control what websites people can visit or what IP addresses are allowed and. But it's not going to address the exact issue I've got at the hand here, guys. Lastly, F. Changing the Wi-Fi password. No, remember the question says clients and vendors need to be able to connect to the network without logging in. That means there is no password at all. So if I'm going to go and change the password, it would mean I would actually have to go and put a password. And that means people won't be able to log in now because they're not going to know what the password is. That's going to be a problem. Anyway, folks, so as I've said earlier, the answer here is C. Going to the second last question here. Question 49, folks. One of your technician friends is installing the latest operating system on a user's computer. The user wants to retain all the settings and files to remain intact after the installation. Which type of installation should the technician do? Oh dear. Right, so obviously if we do a normal installation from scratch, that normally means the machine's going to be blank. Yeah, there's going to be no retention of any form of data or settings. So if we do a network installation, is that going to work? No, a network installation usually means it's going to be a clean installation. I'm not saying it will be, but it's normally. So normally you're going to do a wipe and load, or it's going to be the first installation you're going to go and do. It's generally not going to keep the previous data. It's generally not going to keep the previous settings. So A might not be the best option here. B, definitely not. B is a clean install. That means this is the first installation, or you just wipe everything on this machine, and it's going to be as if it's the first installation. I mean, it literally says in the name, clean installation. So it's definitely not going to keep anything for that matter. So A is out here, folks. B is out. Looking at answer C, an in-place upgrade. That is certainly possible. An in-place upgrade does keep your settings and files and data and programs. You have to tell it to do that, but it's possible. Unfortunately, a drawback about an in-place upgrade means you need to have an existing operating system. Now, fortunately for us, the question does not say they've got no operating system installed. It just says one of your technician friends is installing the latest operating system on a user's computer. That could mean a lot of things. It's open for interpretation. So that could mean that they've got no operating system. It could mean that they do have one and they just want to go and upgrade. So the fact that they want to install the latest one could be seen as they have one and they simply want to upgrade. So C is in fact plausible. Looking at answer D, image deployment. No guys, image deployment normally entails doing a clean install of sorts. You're just going to go and do that kind of via the network or something, or via flash drive. So A, B, and D is out. The only one here that's going to kind of sort of allow you to keep your files, your settings, and possibly data is an in-place upgrade. The answer is answer C, in-place upgrade. Alright folks, moving you on finally to the last question in this video. And once we get to the end of this question, guys, please do not disappear. There's obviously a couple of things I want to mention at the end of this video that may or may not be important. Things like there's going to be extra practice question videos. And of course, if you want any additional material over and above these practice questions, maybe just go and check out my Patreon, guys. You can find that link in the video description down below. So go and check out my Patreon. You might find what you're looking for there. So my Patreon often has extra material that's not available on YouTube. Anyway, covering the last question here, guys. A user at the company of your clients is working with highly regulated data. The user notices that often there is a high amount of traffic in their work area and is concerned about possible data exposure as people walk by. So this kind of sort of sounds like the health worker or that police officer again, kind of sort of. Which of the following security measures can be used? Can we use a biometric device? No, guys. Remember, the concern here is people walking nearby. So if people are walking by, I'm probably going to be at the PC. So having some sort of biometric device is only applicable if you want to prevent them from getting on the device. Yes, biometric might be very effective then. Very good security. My concern is not preventing them from getting on my device. It's preventing them from seeing on my screen to begin with. I might be in front of my machine here right now, but I've got a lot of people walking behind me, and I'm concerned that these folks might see something they're not supposed to when they're walking past. Biometric is not going to stop that. Cable lock, if you look at answer B, also good security, but has to physically prevent something from being stolen. So B is very unrelated to this question. So it's not A, it's not B. C, a privacy screen. So far, that's actually plausible. A privacy screen prevents people from seeing stuff they're not supposed to when they're nearby. So if you're in a cubicle, those little walls on the side, that could be seen as a privacy screen. Or you can have something behind you, so that if people walk nearby behind you, they cannot see on your screen. So a privacy screen can actually take care of that problem. So far the answer is C here, guys. A man trap. No. Man trap is completely unrelated. It is something we do get in IT, not often, but it is something we do get in IT. A man trap is to trap something, like the name suggests, trap a person in a certain location. So where you guys might most commonly see this, depending on your country, is if you walk into a bank, you might find they've got like this glass box you've got to walk into before you get into the bank or out of the bank. I've seen the same things at some jewelry stores. So if you want to get into the jewelry store or the bank, there's this glass box you've got to walk into. So you'll probably have to first wait for some sort of light to turn green, indicating you may enter this box, which is generally bulletproof, by the way. Once you're in the box, they will go and check if you look like a threat. If it looks like you're a threat, they will not open the box and you're trapped inside the box. And it doesn't matter if you've got a weapon or not, because this box is bulletproof. If you don't look like a threat, you'll be able to enter the establishment. And if you were to get up to some sort of nonsense in this establishment, remember, you've got to get out of the establishment through that same glass box. And once you get into that glass box, who's to say they will open it for you? Because if you just rob them, obviously they're not going to open it for you, because, well, then you're going to go out. And if they trap you inside, it's not like you can shoot your way out, because, well, you're trapped. It's bulletproof. Anyway, folks, the answer here is C, a privacy screen. Well, folks, we finally reached the end of this video. Woof, I am tired. My mouth feels like a cotton ball, from doing all that talking. I really hope you've learned something from this video. I really hope this has helped prepare you for the exam. I wish you all the best for your exam. And please stay tuned for more practice questions for both Quarter 1 and Quarter 2. I will be making more videos for both Quarter 1 and Quarter 2. Those will be available for free on YouTube. I'll also be making additional material, which is probably going to be available only on my Patreon. So maybe just check out my Patreon as well, guys. And before we conclude this video, quick shout out and thank you to all of you guys sponsoring and supporting this channel. So whether it's just you clicking on the thanks button below the video, if it's available in your country, thank you very much. Whether it's you buying me a coffee or a milkshake, that's in the video description down below, guys, if you want to do that. Or whether you are doing PayPal donations, or even if you become a Patreon. Thank you very much, guys. So here is a list of the people making PayPal donations. Thank you very much, guys. Really do appreciate it. And here is a list, there's actually multiple pages, of people that are Patreons, paid Patreons. And keep in mind, the majority of Patreons prefer to have their names stay anonymous. So if you are a paid Patreon of mine, I will normally reach out to you, or you can reach out to me. I'll ask you if you want to be on this list. And if you do want to be on this list, I'll ask you what name you want to have displayed. And yeah, your name is going to be on this list then. Alternatively, you can stay anonymous too if you want to. That is an option. Lastly, folks, if you don't know, but I think most of you do know, the channel does have a Discord server. You're welcome to join that. I am on that Discord server. Other trainers on the server. People studying for the scores on that server. So if you want to ask questions, or if you want to help people their questions, either way, it's a community of like-minded people, so go and check it out. Alright folks, I will see you on the next video. Best of luck of your exams, guys.